Hey there, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I've put together a new collection of interesting stories, so whether you're here to relax, fall asleep, or just listen in the background, this should be a good one. Feel free to let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always interesting to see where everyone is tuning in from. Now, let's start with the first story. It is titled,
During my son's wedding, his bride whispered to me, "Buy us a house, or I'll lie and say I'm pregnant with your child." I calmly stood up, put my hand in my pocket, and took out something that made her scream. The wedding was cancelled. The fabric samples lay scattered across my desk when the phone rang. I've been comparing burgundy and navy upholstery swatches for the Scottsdale showroom, squinting at them under the fluorescent lights. Thursday afternoon, the kind of quiet February day where business hums along without crisis. Dad, are you sitting down?" Kevin's voice hit me like electricity. My son didn't call during work hours unless something had happened. "What's wrong?" I straightened in my chair, already running through possibilities. Accident, job loss, health crisis. Nothing's wrong. Everything's perfect. His words tumbled over each other, breathless. "Jessica's pregnant. We're getting married 2 weeks from Saturday." I know it's fast, but when you know, right? The sample slipped from my fingers. Kevin, my son, who'd stumbled through 3 failed engagements in his 20s, who'd spent the last 5 years avoiding commitment entirely. Pregnant, married. Kevin, I searched for words that felt genuine. "That's wonderful. I'm happy for you. I want you to meet her properly tonight, maybe. Can we come for dinner?" I glanced at my watch. 3:15. Absolutely. 7 o'clock. After he hung up, I sat back in my leather chair and stared at the ceiling tiles. Kevin hadn't mentioned Jessica before last month. Now she was pregnant and they were planning a wedding. The timeline felt compressed, rushed. But maybe that was just my old-fashioned sensibility. My late wife Anne and I had dated for 3 years before marrying. Different generation, different rules. I wanted this to work for him. I wanted it badly. The market on Camelback had decent steaks. I selected 2 ribeyes and a New York strip. Grabbed asparagus and baby potatoes. Wine. I chose a Napa Cabernet. Nothing too expensive, but respectable. At home, I set the dining room table with Anne's china. The ivory plates with the delicate gold rim she'd received from her grandmother. If Kevin was starting a family, this moment deserved acknowledgement. Tradition mattered. They arrived exactly at 7. Kevin came through the door with that nervous energy I remembered from his childhood piano recital, practically vibrating. The woman beside him moved differently, smooth, controlled, her heels clicking against my tile entryway with purpose. "Dad, this is Jessica." She was striking, dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, designer dress that probably costs more than my monthly utility bill. Her handshake was firm, almost aggressive, and her smile stayed fixed on her mouth without reaching her eyes. "Charles, Kevin talks about you constantly." Her gaze swept past me, cataloging the living room, the furniture, the art on the walls. "What a lovely home." "Thank you. Please come in. Dinner's almost ready." Kevin hovered beside her like a satellite, watching her reactions. I led them to the dining room where Jessica's attention immediately locked onto the china cabinet. "Interesting pieces. Are these antiques?" She moved closer to the cabinet, phone already in her hand. "Do you mind if I take a few photos? I love vintage design." Before I could answer, she was snapping pictures of the credenza, the grandfather clock in the corner, the cabinet itself. Kevin jumped in. "Jess is really into interior design. She's got amazing taste." "I'm sure she does." I headed to the kitchen, grateful for the excuse to move. Something in her tone when she said antiques hadn't sounded like admiration. It sounded like appraisal. Dinner started pleasantly enough. Kevin asked about the business, updating me on his work in commercial real estate, but Jessica dominated the conversation with surgical precision. 4 stores, Kevin mentioned. That must generate significant revenue. She cut into her steak, eyes on me. "What's the annual take for something like that?" "It varies. Economy affects furniture sales more than people realize." I kept my voice light, businesslike. "But you must do well. This neighborhood, the house, the business," she gestured with her fork. "You've built something substantial." Kevin shifted in his seat. "Dad worked incredibly hard. Built it from a single storefront." "Very impressive." Jessica sipped her wine. "We drove through Paradise Valley yesterday. Those estates are breathtaking. That's where I picture raising a family. Good schools, safe neighborhoods. Important for children, don't you think?" The implication hung between us like smoke. Kevin focused on his plate, cutting his meat into smaller and smaller pieces. Paradise Valley is expensive, I said carefully. Of course, but you can't put a price on a grandchild's future. Her hand covered Kevin's on the table. We're still figuring out our housing situation. My current rental is impossible. The landlord refuses to make basic repairs. With a baby coming, we need proper space. Kevin finally spoke. We're looking at places, Dad. Nothing fancy yet. Nothing fancy, but something safe. Jessica's smile widened. Kevin tells me you're very generous with family. That's rare these days. I took a long drink of water, buying time. Every instinct I'd honed over 40 years in business was firing warnings. These weren't casual dinner questions. She was establishing needs, testing responses, calculating possibilities. The rest of the meal passed in similar fashion. Jessica commented on the furniture, then asked what pieces cost. She mentioned her student loans, then wondered aloud how Kevin's family handled financial planning. She complimented the house, then noted how much upkeep older homes required. Kevin barely spoke. When he did, it was to soften her edges. What Jessica means is or she's just excited about the wedding. When they finally left around 10:30, Jessica hugged me at the door. She leaned in close, her perfume overwhelming, and whispered, "Thank you for being so understanding. Kevin talks about your generosity all the time. We're lucky to have you." Kevin Unk's hug was quick, distracted. He seemed eager to leave. I stood in the doorway, watching their tail lights disappear down the street. Jessica's head was already bent over her phone, illuminated by the screen's glow. Inside, I cleared the table slowly, rinsing Anne's china by hand, though the dishwasher would have been easier. My hands moved through the routine while my mind replayed the evening. The way Jessica photographed my home without asking. The pointed questions about money, about real estate, about my generosity. Kevin's silence, his hunched shoulders, the way he avoided my eyes. I told myself it was nerves, wedding stress. But my gut, the same instinct that had saved me from disastrous business partnerships, from bad investments, from deals that looked perfect on paper but felt wrong, was screaming. Something about her eyes when she looked around my home. She wasn't seeing a family house where her child's grandfather lived. She was doing math. I woke at 6 o'clock Friday morning after 3 hours of fractured sleep. Every time I drifted off, I saw Jessica's face across my dining table. Heard her voice asking about revenue and real estate. The coffee maker gurgled while I sat at the kitchen table staring at the chairs where they'd sat 12 hours earlier. The details wouldn't leave me alone. The way she'd held her phone when photographing the credenza, not like someone admiring furniture, but like someone cataloging inventory. Her questions hadn't been conversational. They'd been reconnaissance. And Kevin's expression, that hollow, defensive look I'd seen before, 3 years ago, when Rachel had controlled every aspect of his life, history repeating while I watched it happen. By 10 o'clock, I was at my office, but the inventory report sat ignored on my desk. I opened LinkedIn on my computer and typed Jessica Simons Phoenix into the search bar. Her profile appeared polished and professional. Spa manager at Desert Serenity Wellness Center. Photos of her at charity events, smiling beside other volunteers, glowing recommendations from colleagues. Everything looked legitimate. I scrolled deeper. Older posts, comment sections on photos, tags from other users, patterns emerged. 2 years ago, dinner at Bourbon Steak with my generous boyfriend. 3 years ago, photos at exclusive restaurants with different men in each one. Comments from someone named Amanda kept appearing. Another rich one. "You're so lucky, sis." Another. The word stuck like a barb. Another rich one. Not another great guy or another keeper. Rich. That was the qualifying characteristic. I stared at the screen, my chest tight. This felt invasive, ugly. But Kevin was my son, my only child. If someone was targeting him, if she was targeting him, I needed to know. My phone sat on the desk. I picked it up 3 times before finally scrolling through my contacts to Marcus Jennings. We'd met at business networking events, crossed paths at charity fundraisers. He worked in credit verification services. We weren't friends exactly, but we were cordial. The conversation was brief and uncomfortable. "Marcus, I need a favor." Unofficial. "It's about my son's fiancée." He didn't ask why. "Give me her information." Marcus called back at 4:30. "Charles, this is off the record." Completely unofficial. "Understand?" "I understand." Jessica Marie Simons. Current address lists Tempe, but that's recent. Previous address was a luxury complex in Scottsdale. She was evicted 11 months ago for non-payment. Rent was $2,800 monthly. I wrote the numbers down, my handwriting sharp and precise. She's carrying $43,000 in credit card debt across 7 different cards, all maxed. 2 collection agencies have filed legal actions. She started bankruptcy proceedings 8 months ago, but never completed them. The pen stopped moving. 43,000. Classic pattern, Charles. Living beyond means for years. The income she reports doesn't match the spending. Not even close. After I hung up, I sat motionless in my office chair, $43,000 in debt, evicted from a luxury apartment. 2 lawsuits. None of this appeared on social media where every photo showed designer clothes and expensive dinners and weekend trips to Sedona. The pregnancy announcement, the rushed wedding, the Paradise Valley comments during dinner. She wasn't marrying Kevin. She was marrying access to money she thought he had. Or more accurately, money she thought I had. I called Kevin at 6:15 after business hours when I knew he'd be home. I'd rehearsed the conversation in my head, planned to stay calm and rational. Son, we need to talk about Jessica. Have you checked her financial background? What? His voice immediately sharpened. What are you talking about? I had someone look into her credit history. Kevin, she has substantial debt, over $40,000. She was evicted from her previous apartment. There are collection agencies. You what? The explosion came through the phone like a physical force. You investigated her. You called in favors to spy on my fiancée. Kevin, listen to me. She has 7 maxed credit cards, 2 active lawsuits. This is serious financial trouble. And with a baby coming, how dare you? His voice cracked. Do you have any idea how controlling this is? How invasive? I'm 35 years old, Dad. I don't need you vetting my life like I'm some teenager. I'm trying to protect you. These are facts. She was paying rent she couldn't afford. She's buried in debt. You can't stand seeing me happy. You never approved of anyone I dated. Rachel, Michelle, Sarah, you found problems with all of them. This isn't about approval. I kept my voice level, fighting to stay calm. This is about a woman with a pattern of financial irresponsibility who suddenly appears pregnant and wants to get married in 2 weeks. Kevin, please just think about the timeline. You just can't stand the thought of me being happy with someone you didn't choose. His words came out ragged, wounded. You never could. I should have known you'd find a way to ruin this. Kevin, don't call me again. The line went dead. I sat there with the phone in my hand, staring at the darkened screen. Outside my office window, the Phoenix sunset painted the sky orange and purple, beautiful and meaningless. I pulled up Jessica's Instagram again on my computer. Every photo showed luxury, designer handbags, expensive restaurants, weekend trips to California wine country, spa days, jewelry. None of it matched a spa manager's salary. None of it made sense unless someone else was paying or unless she was hunting for someone who would pay. The pregnancy test could be real or manufactured. The rushed wedding ensured minimal time for questions. The Paradise Valley comments were anchors, establishing expensive expectations early. Kevin's defensiveness kept interference minimal. She'd done this before. Amanda's comment proved it. Another rich one. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a legal pad, something I did when problems needed solving. At the top of the page, I wrote, Jessica Simons, what I know. The list grew. Debt amounts, eviction date, the timing of her relationship with Kevin. Every pointed question from last night's dinner. When I finished, 3 pages were covered in notes. Kevin wouldn't listen. That was clear. He'd chosen his side, and it wasn't mine. Which meant I had 2 weeks before the wedding. 2 weeks to find proof she was targeting him. 2 weeks to stop this before she destroyed my son. I clicked back to her Instagram, studying each photo with new eyes. Somewhere in this carefully curated performance was the truth. Somewhere was evidence. I just had to find it. A week had passed since Kevin hung up on me. 7 days of silence that felt like months. I'd left voicemails, 8 of them. The first 2 were calm, rational explanations of the credit report. By the 4th, I was pleading. By the 7th, I stopped trying to sound composed. None were returned. Thursday afternoon, I drove past Kevin's apartment in Tempe. Jessica's white BMW sat in his parking spot like a territorial marker. I circled the block twice before forcing myself to leave. Marcus called Wednesday with more information, his voice reluctant. Charles, I shouldn't tell you this, but Kevin maxed out his savings account. $47,000 gone for the wedding. That's not all. He took out a personal loan, $35,000 at 18% interest just for the reception venue. I sat in my office holding the phone long after Marcus hung up. $82,000. Kevin's entire safety net, plus debt that would take years to clear for a wedding that would last 4 hours. The invitation arrived in Saturday's mail. Heavy card stock, embossed lettering, my name in elegant script. The Phoenician Resort, Scottsdale. Ceremony at noon, February 22nd. I searched the venue online. Their wedding packages started at $80,000. Premium upgrades, the kind Jessica would demand, pushed costs well past six figures. The math wouldn't work. Kevin's salary, his savings, the loan. None of it covered what I was seeing. Someone had guaranteed additional expenses. Monday morning, I called the resort's events coordinator. My voice casual. I'm inquiring about availability for my daughter's wedding. What does the Powell ceremony on the 22nd include? The woman's enthusiasm poured through the phone. Oh, the Powell wedding is beautiful. Premium everything. Open bar with top-shelf selections. Live orchestra, imported French roses, chef's tasting menu for 200 guests. They spared no expense. I thanked her and ended the call, my stomach hollow. Kevin was drowning and Jessica was piling stones in his pockets. That night, I sat at my kitchen table typing messages to Kevin on my phone, deleting them. Typing again, deleting. Son, please call me back. Delete. Kevin, I'm worried about your finances. Delete. I love you and I'm sorry. Delete. Everything sounded either controlling or pathetic. I sent nothing. Wednesday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Charles, it's Jessica. We need to talk privately before the ceremony. It's important for Kevin's sake. Can we meet? I stared at the message for 10 minutes, reading it over and over. She was making a move, but toward what? My instinct, the same sense that had kept me from ruinous business deals for 40 years, screamed that this was negotiation, not reconciliation. I typed, when and where. Her response came within seconds. Tomorrow evening, your house? Kevin thinks I'm at my bachelorette dinner. 7 p.m. Thursday morning, I drove to an electronics store on Bell Road. The clerk was young, enthusiastic about the products arranged on gleaming shelves. I need a recording device for business meetings, I told him. He showed me a unit the size of a USB drive. This model is excellent. 20 hours of battery, voice activated, so it only records when someone's talking. Clear audio up to 15 feet. Is it legal for recording conversations in Arizona? Absolutely. One-party consent state. As long as you're part of the conversation, you can record it. I bought it immediately. In my car, I researched Arizona's recording laws on my phone. The clerk was right. One-party consent. Legal to record conversations I participated in without informing the other party. I practiced activating the device. A simple button on the side, a single red blink, then darkness. I drove home and tested it, recording myself reading the newspaper aloud, playing it back. My voice sounded strange and distant, but every word was intelligible. Whatever Jessica wanted, I'd have proof. Friday evening at 7 o'clock, I watched through my front window as Jessica's BMW pulled into my driveway. She stepped out wearing a soft pink sweater, her makeup understated, hair loose around her shoulders. She looked young, vulnerable, every detail calculated to project innocence. I activated the recorder in my jacket pocket before opening the door. The red light blinked once. Charles, thank you for seeing me. Her smile was apologetic, practiced. I know things have been tense. I led her to the living room. She settled onto the couch, accepted a glass of water, and her expression turned gentle. I owe you an apology. I was pushy at dinner. Wedding stress, you understand? I didn't mean to come across as materialistic. I watched her performance, recognizing the technique. Soften the target before the real request. I'd seen it in business negotiations dozens of times. Kevin loves you so much. She continued. This distance between you is killing him. I wanted to fix things before the wedding. Can we start over? Her eyes were wide, sincere, perfectly practiced. If I didn't know what I knew, I might have believed her. I appreciate you coming, Jessica. I want Kevin to be happy. She smiled, relief flooding her features. Then carefully, there is one small thing. Kevin's been stressed about money. The wedding costs more than we planned. She paused, letting silence do its work. I said nothing. I wondered if you might help with our housing situation after the wedding, just temporarily, until we get settled. The test, probing my willingness to provide money, measuring my resistance. We can discuss that after you're married, I said carefully. Let's focus on the wedding first. Her smile tightened. Not the answer she wanted, but she nodded and left 15 minutes later. After her tail lights disappeared down the street, I sat in my darkened living room and played back the recording. Her voice emerged crystal clear, every inflection captured. Tomorrow was the wedding. Whatever Jessica really wanted, she'd ask for it then, and I'd be ready. Saturday morning arrived cold and bright. I'd slept 3 hours, spent the rest pacing my bedroom, running through scenarios. None prepared me for what was coming. The Phoenician resort spread across the base of Camelback Mountain like a palace. I pulled into the circular drive at 10 o'clock, watching valet in crisp uniforms rush toward arriving cars. Money radiated from every detail, the spotless pavement, the towering palms, the marble columns framing the entrance. Ice sculptures flanked the doorway. Massive swans that must have cost thousands. Floral arrangements 12 feet tall lined the walkway. White roses and orchids arranged in cascading waves. I mentally calculated 5,000 for flowers alone, possibly more. Kevin's friends were arriving, women in designer cocktail dresses, men in expensive suits. I recognized a few faces from his college years. They looked successful, established, the kind of crowd Jessica would want as witnesses to her triumph. I touched my jacket pocket, feeling the recorder's small weight. My phone buzzed. Guest lounge, second floor, east wing. 11 a.m. alone. I walked through the venue toward the ceremony space. The ballroom had been transformed into something from a luxury magazine spread. Crystal chandeliers reflected light across hundreds of white roses. Gold chairs arranged in perfect rows for 200 guests. A string quartet warming up in the corner. Champagne fountain already flowing. Bubbles catching light. Through an open door, I saw Kevin surrounded by groomsmen. He was laughing at something, adjusting his bow tie, checking his watch. He looked genuinely happy. My chest tightened watching him. At exactly 11, I climbed the staircase to the second floor. The guest lounge was empty, private, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the mountain. I activated the recorder. The single red blink confirmed it was working and slipped it back into my pocket. Jessica entered at 11:03, closing the door quietly behind her. The wedding dress was stunning. Vera Wang probably elegant silk with intricate beading across the bodice. Her makeup was flawless, hair swept up in an elaborate updo, diamond earrings catching every movement of light. She looked like a princess from a fairy tale, but her eyes were cold mathematics. Charles, thank you for coming early. Her smile was warm, practiced. I know things have been difficult. I nodded, said nothing. She walked to the window, her voice casual. It's a beautiful day. Kevin's so happy. He wishes you two weren't fighting. I want him to be happy, I said carefully. That's all I've ever wanted. She turned, her smile never reaching her eyes. Then we should talk about how to make that happen. Permanently. The word hung between us like a suspended blade. Her tone shifted businesslike now. Charles, let's be practical. Kevin and I need a house. Paradise Valley. At least $850,000. Jessica, that's a significant amount. She cut me off. I'm pregnant. We need proper space. You're a grandfather now. Surely that means something. I can help with a down payment. 15, maybe 20%. But purchasing an entire, that's not going to work. Her voice went cold, the mask dropping completely. She stepped closer. I saw the predator clearly now, no longer hiding. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to buy us that house full payment this week. And if I don't, her smile was sharp as broken glass. Then I'd tell everyone the truth, that I'm pregnant with your child. Ice flooded my veins, but I kept my voice steady. That's absurd. No one would believe. She laughed soft and vicious. Really? Who do you think they'll believe? A 63-year-old man or a pregnant 32-year-old woman in a wedding dress? Each word was a calculated strike. I'll tell them you tried to seduce me at that first dinner. That you've been sending me inappropriate messages for weeks. That when I rejected you, you tried to sabotage our wedding with fake financial reports. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. Kevin will never speak to you again. Your business reputation destroyed. Everyone loves a scandal. Furniture magnate preys on son's pregnant fiancée. That's front page material. She paused, letting it sink in. Or you buy us a house, play the generous grandfather, and everyone's happy. Your choice. You have 60 seconds. The silence stretched thick and suffocating. I stood motionless. 3 seconds, 4, 5, processing shock, fury, the calculated cruelty of her entire plan. Then I spoke, my voice quiet and level. Jessica, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. Her smile faltered slightly. Excuse me. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small recording device, held it up. The red recording light blinked steadily. Jessica's face drained of color, white as her wedding dress. What is that? Every word from the moment you walked in. She lunged forward, grabbing for the device, her voice rising to a shriek. Give me that. You can't. That's illegal. I pulled back, stepped toward the door. Arizona is a one-party consent state. Completely legal. You recorded me. You set me up. I opened the door. Jessica followed, still grabbing at my arm, her composure shattered. I walked quickly down the stairs toward the ceremony hall. Her screams followed me. Charles, wait. Please, we can work this out. I didn't mean. Guests in the foyer turned, staring. I didn't stop. I entered the ballroom and walked straight to the sound technician near the string quartet. Connect this to your system. Play it now. The technician looked confused. Sir, the ceremony's about to do it now. Jessica rushed in behind me. Mascara starting to run, face twisted with panic. Kevin appeared from the groom's room, his expression confused. Dad, what's happening? The recording began. Jessica's voice filled the ballroom through crystal clear our speakers. Charles, let's be practical. Kevin and I need a house. Every guest froze. 200 people locked in horrified silence. The recording continued, her pregnancy threat, the seduction accusation, the blackmail demand, every word captured with perfect clarity. Kevin stood paralyzed, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, recognition, horror. When the recording ended, silence blanketed the room like sudden snow. Jessica stumbled backward, words failing, excuses dying on her lips. Kevin stared at his bride, then at me, then back at Jessica. His voice broke. Tell me he faked that. Tell me this isn't real. Jessica opened her mouth, but no convincing lie emerged. I watched my son's face crack open, watched the illusion he'd built shatter into pieces. The wedding was over before it began. The recording's final words faded into crushing silence. I watched Kevin's face cycle through emotions like channels flipping on a television. Confusion, denial, desperate hope that somehow this was fake, that his father had manufactured evidence to destroy his happiness. Jessica broke the silence first, her voice rising toward hysteria. He edited that. He manipulated the audio. Charles, how could you do this? Kevin turned to me, his eyes pleading, Dad, tell me you faked it. Please. My voice came out quiet, steady. Every word is real, Kevin. Unedited. I can provide the original file, timestamps, metadata. His face hardened. Not acceptance, not belief in the evidence, just a wall slamming down between us. A guest near the front whispered loudly enough to carry through the ballroom. I heard what I heard. That woman was blackmailing him. Kevin moved toward Jessica, who had begun crying. Real tears streaming down her face. Mascara running in careful tracks. Perfect victim performance. She clutched his arm. Kevin, he's trying to destroy us. He never wanted you to be happy. This is revenge because you chose me over him. I took a step forward. Son, listen to what she actually said. She threatened to claim you weren't the father. She demanded $850,000. Kevin Unk's voice cracked raw with pain and fury. You always did this. Every relationship I had, you found something wrong. You can't stand seeing me with someone. The words hit like fists. This isn't about control. She was blackmailing me. You heard it. You recorded her without permission. You set her up. His eyes were wet now, voice shaking with anguish. You're jealous because you've been alone since Mom died, and you can't handle me being loved. The accusation hung poisonous in the air between us. I opened my mouth, but no response came. How do you argue with someone who's chosen their illusion over reality? Who needs the lie more than the truth? Kevin took Jessica's hand. We're leaving. Don't contact me ever. Jessica threw me a look over her shoulder as they walked toward the exit. Calculation mixed with triumph. She'd lost the wedding, but kept her prize. Some guests remained seated, uncertain. Others began gathering belongings, avoiding eye contact with me. A woman I recognized as Jessica's friend, Amanda, called out, "We believe you, Jess. This is disgusting." But other guests approached me quietly. That recording was clear. I'm sorry about your son. The resort manager appeared uncomfortable in his crisp suit. Mr. Powell, we'll handle the cancellation arrangements. No charge for the venue. I nodded, unable to form words. Within an hour, the ballroom emptied. I sat in one of the gold chairs, surrounded by $80,000 worth of flowers and untouched champagne fountains. My phone vibrated constantly. Texts from friends, family, people who were there. I didn't read them. A waiter approached nervously. Sir, can I bring you anything? I shook my head. He retreated, leaving me alone in the wedding that wasn't. I drove home in a fog. The afternoon heat shimmering off the asphalt in waves. My house felt enormous and empty when I entered. Anne's absence sharp as broken glass even after 3 years. Sunday morning, My phone buzzed with a text from Kevin's number. The message was brief, final. I'm not your son anymore. Jessica and I are moving forward together. Don't call. Don't text. You're dead to me. I read it 3 times. Each word felt permanent, carved in stone. Sunday afternoon, a friend forwarded me Jessica's Instagram post. The photo showed her in casual clothes, eyes red from crying, no makeup, calculated authenticity. The caption read, "Heartbroken doesn't begin to cover it." Kevin's father sabotaged our wedding because he couldn't accept someone loving his son. He recorded a private conversation, edited it to make me look terrible, and destroyed the happiest day of my life. To everyone asking, yes, Kevin and I are staying together. Real love survives attacks. The post had 347 likes, 89 supportive comments. I saw names I recognized, mutual acquaintances, business contacts, people who should know better. Some comments were different. I was there. That recording sounded pretty clear to me. But they were buried under Jessica's supporters. I set my phone down and didn't pick it up again for hours. Monday morning, I sat across from Richard Clark in his downtown Phoenix office. He was 58, gray suit, calculating eyes that had seen every kind of family disaster. He'd listened to the recording twice, taken notes, and now delivered his assessment. The recording is completely legal. Arizona's one-party consent law is clear. But I waited through the pause. She can still sue you. Emotional distress. Defamation. Claim you recorded her in a bathroom or somewhere with expectation of privacy even though you didn't. Make your life expensive even if she loses. So she gets away with it. Richard leaned back. Not necessarily. But you need to be smarter than just having proof. You need to build a pattern. Show this isn't an isolated incident. He slid a business card across the desk. Private investigator. Discreet, expensive, but thorough. I pocketed the card. What am I looking for? Her history, previous relationships, financial records. Anything that shows this is her playbook, not a one-time mistake. If she's done this before, those men might talk. I nodded, feeling pieces of a plan forming. Richard added quietly. And Charles, prepare yourself. Your son might not come around. Not soon. Maybe not ever. The words landed heavy and true. As I stood to leave, Richard mentioned almost casually, one more thing. I had someone check hospital records. Doctor visits. Jessica Simons hasn't seen an OB/GYN in 2 years. I froze. She's not pregnant. No medical evidence she is. No prenatal vitamins purchased on her insurance. No appointments. Either she's lying or she had a very recent miscarriage she hasn't mentioned. I felt fury and something like relief collide. She lied about being pregnant to pressure Kevin into marriage. That would be my assessment, which makes the blackmail even more calculated. She was building urgency around a fiction. I sat back down heavily. The cruelty of it, using a fake pregnancy to trap my son, settled over me like wet concrete. I left the lawyer's office, stepped into harsh Phoenix sunlight. I had evidence, a legal recording, proof of Jessica's manipulation, but Kevin still chose her. The victory felt like ashes. 3 manila folders spread across my desk. The private investigator's report on Jessica's past. First folder, Robert Green, 45, divorced tech executive from 2022. The PI found bank records showing Robert paid Jessica $75,000 after dating 6 months. His statement to the investigator. She threatened to accuse me of assault if I didn't pay. I had a daughter, a business reputation. I paid to make her disappear. Second folder, Michael Torres, 51, real estate investor from 2020. Similar pattern, 4-month relationship, sudden pregnancy claim, demands for money. Michael paid $50,000 before Jessica miscarried. 2 weeks later. Third folder, David Chen, 48, restaurant chain owner from 2019. He paid $30,000 to end the relationship after she threatened workplace harassment claims. I leaned back, processing the timeline. 3 men in 5 years, $155,000 extracted through threats. Each relationship followed identical beats. Charm, offensive, rapid escalation, pregnancy or assault claim, payment, disappearance. The PI's notes included one chilling line. Subject displays textbook predatory financial behavior. Targets men 15 to 20 years older. Established wealth, family reputation to protect. Kevin fit the profile perfectly. Not wealthy himself, but with a father who was. I felt sick recognizing how calculated it had been. Jessica hadn't fallen for Kevin. She'd researched him like a business investment. Wednesday afternoon, I was at my flagship furniture store reviewing inventory when my assistant approached. Someone here to see you. Says it's personal. A woman stood near the entrance. Early 60s, gray hair and a neat bob, wearing simple slacks and a cardigan. A library book tucked under her arm. Her face was tired, kind with Jessica's cheekbones, but none of her hardness. She extended her hand. Mr. Powell, I'm Barbara Collins, Jessica's mother. Could we speak privately? My first instinct was suspicion. Another manipulation, but her eyes were direct, sad, genuine. I led her to my office and closed the door. Barbara sat, took a breath. I owe you an apology and possibly an explanation. She spoke carefully, like each word cost something. I saw what happened at the wedding. A friend sent me the video someone posted online. I winced. I hadn't known there was video. I've watched my daughter manipulate people since she was 16. Boyfriends, employers, even me. She stole $12,000 from my savings 3 years ago. I reported it to police, then dropped charges when she cried and promised to change. Her voice didn't waver. She's done this before. Other men. I didn't know the details, but I knew the pattern. She'd date someone wealthy. The relationship would end abruptly. Suddenly, she'd have new furniture, a new car, expensive trips. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Barbara met my eyes. Because you tried to protect your son, and he rejected you for it. I know that pain. Jessica pushed me away years ago. The only time she contacts me is when she needs money or an alibi. She paused, and because she's planning something else. I saw her text conversation with her sister, Amanda. I sat forward. What kind of conversation? Barbara pulled out her phone. Opened screenshots. Amanda left her phone at my house last month. I looked. I know it's wrong, but I needed to know what Jessica was doing. She handed me the phone. The text thread between Jessica and Amanda read like a criminal blueprint. Jessica. Kevin's broke now, but his dad's loaded. The recording is a problem, but I can work around it. Get Kevin to sue Charles for emotional damages. Split whatever we win. Amanda, you think Kevin will sue his own dad? Jessica, he'll do whatever I tell him. He's already isolated from everyone but me. Give it 2 months, then I'll suggest he deserves compensation for childhood trauma or something. Make it about therapy costs. I read it twice, feeling cold, fury build. I looked up at Barbara. You're giving this to me. Why? Her voice was quiet. Because I failed as a mother somewhere. I don't know where or when, but I created this. And I can't watch her destroy more lives. This is your daughter. Yes, and I love her. But I also know she won't stop unless someone stops her. You have resources to fight back. Kevin's in danger, even if he doesn't see it yet, she added. There's more. Email threads where Jessica discusses targets. A spreadsheet of men she researched, including income estimates. She treated your son like a business acquisition. I felt something shift inside me. Not just anger, but strategy forming. Barbara visited again Thursday morning at a coffee shop I suggested. Neutral ground. She brought more evidence. Printouts of Jessica's social media from years ago, deleted posts bragging about landing wealthy men. We sat for 2 hours, Barbara filling in gaps the pie couldn't access. I found myself talking about Kevin's childhood, my late wife, how hard I tried after she died. Barbara listened, shared her own story. Husband left when Jessica was 10. She raised both daughters alone on a librarian's salary. Jessica always wanted what we couldn't afford, Barbara said. I thought it was normal kid stuff. By the time I realized it was something else, it was too late. The conversation shifted from evidence to something more personal. 2 parents wounded by their children. Over the next week, Charles and Barbara met 3 more times. Initially to discuss strategy, share information, plan legal moves, but the conversations drifted. Books we'd read, Phoenix's Relentless Heat, The Loneliness of Empty Houses. I noticed Barbara's careful intelligence, her quiet humor, the way she listened completely. She noticed my fairness, my restraint, despite having weapons to destroy Jessica legally. Neither of us named what was happening, but something was a recognition. Comfort in shared damage. Friday afternoon, Barbara emailed me a file, Jessica's project spreadsheet. I opened it, felt my blood pressure spike. Column headers, name, age, net worth, SD, vulnerabilities, timeline, expected yield. Kevin Powell 3585K salary but father owns 4 business father guilt isolated desperate to prove independence 6 to 8 months 500K 1mm 9 other names were listed above Kevin's dates going back to 2018 most had notes completed 75K completed 50K failed 2 smart failed had prenup I forwarded the file to Richard immediately this wasn't just evidence it was a confession. Barbara and I met at the coffee shop again Friday evening. I slid my laptop across the table, showed her Richard's response. This changes everything. We can pursue fraud charges, but we need to be strategic about when we reveal this. Barbara nodded slowly. What's the goal? Protecting Kevin or punishing Jessica? I considered both, but protecting Kevin comes first, even if he hates me for it. Barbara's hand rested briefly on the table near mine. Then we do this carefully. Together. The word together sat between us, meaning more than strategy. The email from my private investigator arrived Thursday morning with the subject line, "New development, urgent." I opened the attachment at my office desk. Screenshots of Jessica's text conversation with a commercial realtor filled my screen. She'd found a luxury spa location in Paradise Valley. Monthly rent $15,000. Her pitch to Kevin emerged through the messages. We'll be partners. Your business degree, my spa management experience. We just need startup capital. I scrolled further. Equipment quotes totaling $180,000. Renovation estimates of $120,000. The final text made my stomach drop. Jessica to the realtor. My fiancé is securing a $200,000 business loan. Can you hold the property for 2 weeks? I forwarded everything to Barbara and Richard immediately. An hour later, the Pi's follow-up arrived, marked confidential smoking gun. Attached was Jessica's LLC registration in Delaware, created 2 weeks earlier. The company name Serenity Wellness Holdings. The registered agent wasn't Kevin. It was Jessica alone. Bank account documents showed an offshore connection in the Cayman Islands. The Pi's note explained, standard setup for capital extraction. Equipment purchases get invoiced to offshore suppliers. Fake companies she controls. Money disappears. Business fails. She vanishes with capital. Target will be left with $200K debt and no assets. Recommend immediate intervention. I'd seen this scheme before. Contractors who defraud investors, vendors who bill for phantom supplies. Kevin wasn't a partner. He was a funding source. I called Richard. I need to stop alone without revealing my involvement. Can it be done? He thought for a moment. Anonymous tip to the bank's risk assessment department. Include her credit history, the LLC structure, the offshore account. Banks hate fraud risk. That afternoon, I created an anonymous email account at the public library downtown. Sat at a computer terminal surrounded by teenagers doing homework and retirees reading news sites. I attached Jessica's credit report, the one Marcus had provided months ago, plus screenshots of the Delaware LLC showing her sole ownership and the Cayman Islands account documentation. Subject line, fraud alert, Kevin Powell loan application. Body text. The supposed business partner, Jessica Simons, has 43 in existing debt, an offshore account, and sole control of the LLC Mr. Powell believes they co-own. Recommend reviewing for fraud indicators. I hit send before I could second guess the decision. 2 days later, Kevin's number appeared on my caller ID. I didn't answer. He would only call if he needed something or wanted to yell. The voicemail he left was brief, angry. I know you did this. The bank rejected my loan. They said someone sent them information about Jessica. This is low even for you. I saved the voicemail. An hour later, Jessica called from Kevin's phone. Charles, we need to talk about boundaries. You're interfering with Kevin's business decisions now. I didn't answer that call either. The following week, Jessica began appearing in my orbit too frequently to be coincidence. Monday morning, she was at the coffee shop I frequented before work. She approached my table. Charles, what a surprise. Can we please talk? I miss Kevin having his father in his life. Wednesday, she appeared in my store's parking lot when I left for lunch. Friday, she showed up at a restaurant where I was meeting a supplier, sat at the bar, made eye contact, smiled. Each time I ensured I wasn't alone, stayed in the coffee shop's crowded main room, called my store manager to walk me to my car, asked the supplier to stay until Jessica left. I recognized the tactic, create situations that could be misinterpreted, then claim harassment or worse. My phone stayed in my pocket, recording every encounter. Saturday afternoon, Jessica appeared at my store again, this time in workout clothes. Tight, strategic. She waited until other customers left and approached my desk. I wanted to apologize privately. Can we talk in your office? I stood but didn't move toward the office. Anything you need to say can be said here. My assistant is right there. I gestured to Sarah, my store manager, watching from 10 feet away. Jessica's voice dropped. Intimate. I think we got off on the wrong foot. I understand why you were protective. Maybe we could start over. Just you and me. Her hand moved toward my arm. I stepped back. Sarah, Could you join us, please? Jessica was just leaving. That evening, I met Barbara at the Phoenix Art Museum, our fourth date, though neither of us had called it that. We walked through the contemporary wing, discussing a sculpture that reminded Barbara of a book she was reading. I found myself smiling genuinely, something I hadn't done since before Kevin's engagement. Over wine. Afterward, I told her about Jessica's attempts to corner me alone. Barbara's face tightened. She's setting a trap. Classic Jessica. Create a situation where it's your word against hers. I know I'm documenting everything. Never alone, always recording. She touched my hand. I hate that you have to live like that, but I'm glad you're being careful. The touch lingered longer than necessary. Both of us noticed. Neither pulled away. Over the next 2 weeks, Barbara and I fell into a rhythm. Coffee twice a week, dinner on weekends, long phone conversations about everything except our children. Barbara introduced me to contemporary fiction I'd never have read. I discovered I liked it. I took her to a symphony at the Scottsdale Center for the Performing Arts. She cried during the Brahms. One evening at her townhouse, reviewing legal documents became background noise to conversation about our lives before the damage. I talked about my late wife, 8 years gone, how I'd stopped living and just maintained. Barbara shared about her ex-husband, the loneliness of raising difficult daughters alone. Neither of us said, "I'm falling for you." But both knew. Late one night, I sat in my home office staring at the framed photo of Kevin from his high school graduation. My phone buzzed. Another blocked call, probably Jessica. I thought about the PI reports, the bank intervention, the careful documentation of Jessica's seduction attempts. I was protecting my son, but Kevin saw it as warfare. The question noted. Was I helping or just punishing? Barbara's text arrived. Stop overthinking. You're doing what's necessary. Get some sleep. Sunday morning, Barbara and I met at our regular coffee shop. A corner table had become ours. She slid her phone across. Amanda posted this yesterday. Read the comments. The Instagram post showed Jessica and Kevin apartment hunting. Caption, new beginnings despite obstacles. Comments from Jessica's friends. Your future Phil is crazy. Can't believe he's still harassing you. Have you considered a restraining order? I felt public opinion shifting against me. Barbara, she's building a narrative, preparing for something bigger than seduction attempts. I met her eyes. Let her come. Richard has everything documented. We're ready. The certified mail arrived at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. I signed for it in my driveway, recognized the law firm letterhead immediately. Civil complaint, Jessica Simons and Kevin Powell versus Charles Powell. I read standing there, April sun already hot on my shoulders. The claims, intentional infliction of emotional distress, defamation, interference with business relations, damages sought, $500,000. The narrative Jessica's lawyers constructed was polished. Defendant, motivated by jealousy and desire to control his adult son, fabricated audio recordings, sabotaged business opportunities, and publicly humiliated plaintiffs at their wedding ceremony. I read it twice, feeling cold, fury build. That afternoon, I sat across from Richard in his downtown office. He'd already reviewed the complaint, made notes in red ink across every page. This is aggressive but sloppy, he said, tapping paragraph 3. They're claiming the recording was fabricated. We have metadata, timestamps, audio, forensic analysis proving authenticity. He flipped to page 5. They claim you sabotaged business opportunities. They'd have to prove you were involved in the bank's decision. Anonymous tip means no proof. Can they win? Richard leaned back. Win? No. Make it expensive and painful? Absolutely. Discovery will be invasive. Depositions, financial records, witnesses. Jessica's betting you'll settle to avoid the hassle. Not happening. Richard smiled. Sharp. Good. Because I've been preparing our counterclaim. Fraud, attempted extortion, blackmail. We have her previous victims willing to testify. The offshore account, Barbara's evidence. When we're done, Jessica won't be able to run this scheme again. I learned through a mutual business contact that Kevin had been fired. Not quit. Despite what Jessica's Facebook post claimed, Mark called me reluctantly. Thought you should know. Kevin's been missing deadlines, arguing with everyone. Finally went off on his supervisor last week. They let him go. I tried to process this. Kevin loved that job. Worked there 7 years. Mark continued. He's not himself. Charles looks exhausted. Lost weight. Whatever's happening with that woman, it's destroying him. I hung up and immediately wrote an email. Son, I heard about your job. Please talk to me. Whatever you need, I'm here. This lawsuit doesn't change that I love you. I sent it to Kevin's personal email, his work email, his phone via text. All bounced back or went unread. Jessica had blocked every channel of communication. Over the next 2 weeks, I wrote physical letters, handwritten on quality paper, each one different, apologizing for the wedding confrontation's public nature while defending the necessity, explaining the evidence I'd found, offering to help financially without conditions, reminiscing about our past together. I mailed them to Kevin's old apartment address. None were returned, but none were answered. I imagined Jessica intercepting them, reading them first, deciding what Kevin saw. The silence was worse than Kevin's anger had been. It meant complete isolation. Barbara called me on a Wednesday evening, voice tight. Amanda just told me Kevin's selling his apartment. I felt the floor drop. That's his only asset. He bought it 5 years ago. Jessica convinced him they need the money for legal fees and living expenses until he finds work. Amanda said, Jessica has a real estate agent already lined up. It'll sell fast. Good area. Nice unit. I did quick math. Kevin bought it for $240,000, probably worth $290 now with Phoenix's market after his existing mortgage, maybe $80,000 in equity. Jessica would burn through that in months, leaving Kevin with nothing. Can I buy it through an LLC? Keep Kevin from knowing? Barbara's silence told me she'd already considered and rejected this. Kevin would eventually find out. It would look like more control. I'm sorry. Desperate, I tried video messages to Kevin's phone. Recorded myself in my living room trying to sound calm despite the tremor in my voice. Kevin, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to look at the evidence with clear eyes. Jessica has an offshore account. She's done this to 3 other men. I can prove all of it. Please just look at what I'm sending you. I attached PDFs, bank records, the Pi report, screenshots of Jessica's LLC. The message showed as delivered but never opened. I recorded another. I know you can't hear this. Jessica's blocking everything, but I need you to know I would do it all again. The recording, the bank tip, everything because you're my son and watching you be destroyed would kill me. I didn't send that one. Too raw, too desperate. Late April evening, I sat in my home office, surrounded by legal documents and evidence files. My phone showed the lawsuit timeline. Discovery starts in 3 weeks, depositions in 6. Kevin's life was imploding. No job, selling his apartment, drowning in debt, isolated from everyone except his manipulator. My intervention was supposed to protect Kevin. Instead, Kevin was worse off than before and blamed me for all of it. The question that had haunted me since February surfaced with new force. What if I'm wrong? Not about Jessica. The evidence was overwhelming. But about the method, the public confrontation, the ongoing interference. Maybe some lessons can't be taught, only learned through pain. I drove to Barbara's townhouse without calling ahead. She opened the door, saw my face, and pulled me inside without questions. We sat on her couch, her hand in mine, while I voiced the doubts. Kevin's life is falling apart. Maybe if I'd handled the wedding differently. Private conversation instead of public recording. Maybe if I'd let him take the loan. Learned the hard way when Jessica disappeared. Barbara listened completely before responding. Jessica destroyed 3 other men's lives before Kevin. You had proof she was blackmailing you. What were your options? Pay her. Let her keep extracting money. But Kevin made his choices, she said firmly. You gave him information. He rejected it. You can't protect someone from themselves forever. She cupped my face. You're not cruel. You're not vindictive. You're a father watching his son make terrible decisions and doing the only thing you can. Building a record so when Kevin finally opens his eyes, there's proof. The truth doesn't stop being true because it's painful. I leaned into her touch, feeling something loosen in my chest. That weekend, I met with Richard to finalize the legal response. He had prepared 2 versions, defensive and aggressive. Defensive keeps things quiet, Richard explained. Aggressive makes this very public, very ugly. Jessica's previous victims would testify. Her financial schemes get exposed in detail. But Kevin's name is attached to the lawsuit. He'd be dragged through it all. I stared at both documents. My son's signature was on the complaint against me, but my son was also a victim, manipulated into attacking his own father. I chose the aggressive option. Kevin needs to see the full truth, even if he hates me for it. Late that night, Barbara and I walked through her neighborhood, the desert air finally cooling. When this is over, the lawsuit, the exposure, everything, Kevin still might not forgive you, she said. I know. Can you live with that? I thought about the past 3 months. Discovering Jessica's scheme, the wedding confrontation, losing Kevin, finding Barbara. My answer surprised me. Yes, because I'll know I did everything possible to save him, even if he never sees it that way. The Maricopa County Superior Court building rose from downtown Phoenix like a monument to order. All glass and concrete fighting the June heat. I sat at the polished defense table beside Richard, watching Jessica's lawyer arrange papers with practiced confidence. Judge Morrison presided, mid-50s, sharp eyes, a reputation for demolishing frivolous lawsuits. Jessica's attorney, Davis, delivered his opening statement with theatrical flair. Charles Powell, jealous father, controlling manipulator, destroyed his son's happiness from pure spite. Kevin sat in the gallery behind Jessica, wearing an ill-fitting suit. He'd lost weight. His face was pale, unreadable. Barbara sat alone 3 rows back. Our eyes met briefly. She nodded, encouragement. Richard waited beside me with predatory patience, yellow legal pad covered in notes. 3 evidence boxes stacked at his feet. Jessica took the stand, swearing oath with practiced sincerity. Her lawyer guided her through the narrative. She'd fallen in love with Kevin, was excited to join his family, but Charles had been hostile from their first meeting. He questioned my finances, investigated my background without permission, then recorded a private conversation where I was joking poorly, I admit, about needing a house. Her voice trembled perfectly. He played that recording at our wedding in front of 200 people. It destroyed everything. Kevin lost his job from the stress. We lost our savings, all because Charles couldn't accept someone loving his son. She dabbed her eyes with tissue. Richard didn't cross-examine aggressively. He asked 3 questions. Miss Simons, how many men have you dated in the past 5 years who were significantly older and financially established? Jessica hesitated. I don't see how that's relevant. Richard smiled. Your Honor, it will become very relevant. Richard began methodically. Your Honor, this isn't about a father's jealousy. It's about a documented predator who has run this identical scheme on at least 3 previous victims. He presented the audio forensic analysis first. Expert testimony via deposition confirming the wedding recording was authentic, unedited with verified timestamps and metadata. Jessica's lawyer objected repeatedly. Judge Morrison overruled each time. I'll hear the evidence, counselor. Next came Jessica's financial history. The credit report showing $43,000 in debt, the eviction, the collection lawsuits, then the Delaware LLC registration for Serenity Wellness Holdings, Jessica's name only, despite telling Kevin they'd be partners. The offshore Cayman Islands account opened 3 weeks before the spa proposal. Bank statements showing the spa business plan was a shell for extracting Kevin's loan. Richard's presentation was surgical. Each document building on the last. Kevin shifted in his seat, face growing paler with each revelation. The defense calls Robert Green. A man in his mid-40s entered expensive suit, graying at temples, successful but carrying visible shame. He swore in, sat, wouldn't look at Jessica. Mr. Green, how do you know the plaintiff? I dated her 3 years ago for about 6 months. How did that relationship end? Green took a breath. She told me she was pregnant, said it was mine. Then she said she needed $100,000 for medical care and to go away quietly. Or she'd tell my ex-wife I'd gotten her pregnant during our custody battle. My daughter was 12. I couldn't risk losing custody. What did you do? I paid $75,000. All I could raise quickly. 2 weeks later, she texted that she'd miscarried. Then she disappeared. Changed her number. Moved. Gone. He produced bank transfer records, text message screenshots where Jessica explicitly demanded money. The courtroom was silent except for someone's sharp intake of breath. Jessica's lawyer tried damage control. Your Honor, Mr. Green's allegations are unproven, and Richard interrupted. We have 2 more victims prepared to testify. Michael Torres paid $50,000 under similar circumstances in 2020. David Chen paid $30,000 in 2019. Same pattern. Fake pregnancy, blackmail, payment, disappearance. He slid their sworn affidavit across to the judge. Judge Morrison read, face darkening. Jessica stood suddenly. Those men are lying. This is a conspiracy. Charles paid them too. Mrs. Simon, sit down. Jessica's lawyer whispered urgently. But she was panicking now, the composed mask cracking. I watched Kevin in the gallery, his face cycling through emotions. Disbelief, recognition, horror. Judge Morrison didn't deliberate long. I've heard enough. This lawsuit is not only without merit. It appears to be part of an ongoing pattern of fraud and extortion. She looked directly at Jessica. Miss Simons, the recording Mr. Powell made was legal under Arizona law. The evidence suggests you did exactly what that recording captured. Attempted to blackmail him for money. Your claims are baseless. The gavel came down. The complaint is dismissed with prejudice. Further, Mrs. Simons, you are ordered to pay defendant's legal costs in the amount of $47,000. Jessica's face went white. I'm also referring this matter to the county prosecutor's office for investigation of possible fraud and extortion charges. This court is adjourned. The gavel's crack echoed like a gunshot. I exited the courthouse into late afternoon heat, loosening my tie. Richard was triumphant. That went better than expected. Morrison doesn't make prosecutorial referrals lightly. Barbara appeared, hugged me briefly, propriety in public, but relief in her eyes. Then I saw Kevin standing by a parking meter, alone, looking lost. Jessica was 20 feet away on her phone, back turned, voice rising in argument. I approached Kevin slowly. Son. He looked at me and for the first time in 6 months really saw me. Dad, those men, what they said. His voice broke and I recognized the sound, his certainty shattering. I know. I'm sorry you had to hear it that way, but you needed to hear it. Kevin's next words came hoarse. The offshore account, the fake pregnancy. Was any of it real? I wanted to comfort him with lies, but chose truth. I don't think so, Kevin. The PI found evidence she researched you before you even met. Your income, my business, everything. She chose you deliberately. Kevin sagged against the parking meter. I quit my job for her. Sold my apartment. Sued my own father. I moved closer. I know and I still love you. That never changed. Kevin looked like he wanted to believe, but couldn't quite reach it yet. Jessica's voice cut across the parking lot. Kevin, we're leaving now. Her tone was sharp, commanding. No more sweet manipulation, just control. Jessica strode over, grabbed Kevin's arm. Don't listen to him. Your father paid those men to lie. It's all a setup. We can appeal. Kevin pulled his arm back slowly. First time I'd seen him resist her. Jessica, they had bank records, text messages. That man was crying on the stand. Jessica's voice went syrupy. Baby, he was acting. Your father is powerful. He has money. He can make people say anything. We have to stay together. You and me against the world, remember? Kevin looked between her and me. Mine visibly at war. I stayed silent. This had to be Kevin's choice. Finally, Kevin said quietly, I need to think. I need space. Jessica's face hardened for one unguarded moment. Pure calculation. No love. Then the mask returned. Of course, baby. Let's go home and talk. Just us. Kevin walked to Jessica's car, movements mechanical. I watched them drive away. Barbara's hand finding mine. Richard approached. He's wavering. Give it time. Reality doesn't sink in instantly. I nodded, but the hollow feeling remained. I'd proved everything in court. Exposed Jessica completely won the legal battle. But Kevin still drove away with her, and that was the only victory that truly mattered. My phone rang during a furniture delivery review at the store. Mid-July afternoon. Phoenix baking under relentless sun. The PI's voice was urgent. I've got something. Jessica's been communicating with Brian Miller, Kevin's old business partner. I remembered Brian. Kevin had cut ties 2 years ago over ethical disagreements. They're planning to forge documents claiming you embezzled money Kevin invested in your business. Bank transfers, falsified contracts, the works. They're meeting tomorrow night to finalize the forgeries. Cold fury flooded through me. After losing in court, she's going criminal. Desperate people make desperate moves. She's facing $47,000 in judgments, plus possible fraud charges. This is her last play. Send me everything. Location, time, the intercepted messages. That evening, I sat with Barbara and Richard at my dining table. Laptop open showing Jessica's message thread with Brian. Jessica's text. The old man has money Kevin technically invested years ago. We can claim he never returned it. Add interest. Make it look like embezzlement. Brian, you keep 30% of whatever we get. Brian's response, I can create backdated investment agreements, fake bank statements. Meet me at Dominic's Steakhouse tomorrow at 7. Bring cash for the documents. Richard leaned back. This is conspiracy to commit fraud. If we call the police now, they'd arrest them. I shook my head. Kevin needs to see it himself. Hear it from her own mouth. Otherwise, she'll convince him it was entrapment or I set her up. Barbara touched my hand. You're going to bring Kevin there. Show him who she really is when she thinks he can't hear. Exactly. Can you get him there without Jessica knowing? Amanda owes me. She's starting to see what Jessica really is. I think she'll help. Next morning, I texted Kevin from a new number. He'd blocked my regular number months ago. Kevin, it's Dad. Please don't delete this. I need to talk to you. Not about Jessica. About your mother. Something I should have told you years ago. Dominic's Steakhouse tonight at 7. I'll wait 1 hour, please. The mention of his late mother was calculated. Kevin always wondered about details I rarely discussed. 3 hours later, a response. I'll be there. 7:15. If this is a trick, I'm done forever. I coordinated with the restaurant manager, an old customer. I need a private booth with a clear line of sight to table 14, and I need you to seat a specific couple at that table at exactly 7 o'clock. The manager, sensing the seriousness, agreed. I arrived at 6:45, took a corner booth with high back seats, could see table 14, but occupants couldn't see me. At 7 o'clock, Jessica and Brian arrived. We're seated at table 14, 20 feet away. Jessica wore business casual, her serious meeting outfit. Brian was mid-40s, slick briefcase on table. They ordered drinks. Then Brian pulled out folders. I've created everything. Investment contracts from 5 years ago showing Kevin put $85,000 into Powell Furniture. Letters requesting return of capital. Your father ignoring them. Jessica examined the documents, smiling. These look perfect. When Kevin sees these, he'll have to sue again. His father will settle rather than face embezzlement charges. My hands clenched under the table, but I waited. At 7:12, Kevin walked in, scanning the restaurant. I watched Kevin approach the host stand, searching for me. He hadn't seen Jessica and Brian yet. They were engrossed in their conspiracy. I texted Kevin, "Don't come to my table yet. Look right. Table 14. Just listen." Kevin's face showed confusion. Then he spotted Jessica. He froze, 20 feet away, partially hidden by a decorative pillar. Jessica's voice carried in the quiet restaurant. "Kevin's such an easy mark. He actually believes everything I tell him. I love you, baby. Your father's the enemy. It's pathetic how desperate he is to be loved." Brian laughed. "You've milked him for what, 6 months now? No job, no apartment, sold everything. Almost dry. This forgery is the last play. We get Charles to settle for maybe $200,000. I take my cut, pay off those court costs, and disappear. Kevin won't even know I'm gone until the lease on our apartment bounces. What about the kid? Still playing?" Jessica's laugh was cold, empty. "Please, there's never been a kid. That idiot believed it without even seeing a test." I watched Kevin's face from across the restaurant. It was the face of someone watching their entire world burn. Kevin Unk's knees buckled slightly. He grabbed the pillar for support. Jessica continued oblivious. The recording at the wedding was my only mistake. Should have checked for devices, but even after that disaster, Kevin stayed. They always stay longer than you expect. She took a sip of wine. Men like Kevin, desperate for validation, daddy issues, isolated, they're perfect targets. You just tell them what they want to hear and watch them hand over everything. Kevin turned, saw me in the corner booth. Our eyes met across the restaurant. Everything Jessica said, every lie, every manipulation, it was all visible in Kevin's expression. I nodded toward the exit. Kevin walked out, moving like a man underwater, and I followed. I found Kevin in the parking lot leaning against a car, face in his hands. He wasn't crying. He was beyond tears in that hollow space after catastrophic loss. I approached slowly. "Son." Kevin Unk's voice came muffled. "You tried to tell me at the wedding, after court, in every letter, I called you jealous, controlling, bitter. You were in love, or what you thought was love. She's very good at this." Kevin finally looked up. "I sold my apartment, quit my job, sued my own father, for someone who just called me an idiot, who was never pregnant, who was never anything real." I moved closer. "You weren't blind, Kevin. You were manipulated by a professional. There's a difference. I lost everything. I have nothing. I am nothing." I pulled my son into a hug. "First physical contact in 8 months. You have me. You've always had me. That never changed. Not once." Kevin broke then, sobbing against my shoulder like he hadn't since childhood. I held him, feeling something fundamental shift back into place. Inside the restaurant, Jessica looked up to see police officers approaching. I'd called them before Kevin arrived, had them waiting, the forgery documents, the conspiracy on audio, the open warrant from the judge's fraud referral, it all converged. Jessica tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Brian was arrested alongside her, both charged with conspiracy to commit fraud and forgery. By morning, Jessica had fled Phoenix on bail, skipping town in the $47,000 judgment. I didn't pursue her. She was out of Kevin's life, And that was the victory that mattered. August arrived with Phoenix monsoons washing the city clean. Kevin moved into my guest room temporarily, started therapy, began job hunting. The process was slow. Rebuilding a life takes longer than destroying one. But I watched my son gradually return. Smiles at breakfast. Interest in conversations, plans for the future. One evening, Barbara and Kevin and I sat on the back patio. I took Barbara's hand. "We have something to tell you. Barbara and I are getting engaged." Kevin's reaction surprised us. He grinned. "About time, Dad. She's way too good for you." Barbara laughed, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Complete. Late August, I hosted a small engagement gathering at my home. 20 close friends, nothing elaborate, everything genuine. Barbara wore a simple blue dress, her smile radiant. Kevin stood beside me as the main witness, healthy weight returning, clarity back in his eyes. When it was time for toast, Kevin tapped his glass, stood. "I need to say something. For months, I thought my father was the enemy. Controlling, jealous, trying to ruin my happiness." His voice steadied. "But the truth is, sometimes the biggest act of love is saying no when everyone else says yes. It's standing between someone you love and danger, even when they hate you for it." Kevin looked at me. "Dad, you saved my life. You let me hate you, sue you, cut you off, and you never stopped trying to protect me. That's not control. That's love. So, thank you for not giving up. Even when I gave up on you." My throat tightened, but I managed. "You're my son. I'd do it again. Every time." Kevin raised his glass. "To Charles and Barbara, two people who know that real love means telling hard truths and standing firm when everything says to walk away." The small gathering applauded, glasses clinked, and I looked around. My son restored. A woman I loved beside me. A future built on ruins. The revenge wasn't destroying Jessica. It was this. Saving Kevin and finding Barbara. That's the victory that matters.
That brings this story to an end. Honestly, a pretty interesting one if you ask me. Let me know your thoughts down below, and let's start with the next one right away. This one is titled,
"I was ready to divorce my wife until I overheard what she told her friends about me." There's a specific kind of silence that fills a home when love is dying. It's not the comfortable quiet of two people who've run out of things to say because they already know each other so well. It's not the peaceful hush of a Sunday morning spent reading separate sections of the newspaper in companionable stillness. No, this silence is different. It's thick, suffocating, the kind that presses against your chest and makes you hold your breath just to avoid disturbing it. Because disturbing it means acknowledging it. And acknowledging it means admitting that something has gone terribly, irreversibly wrong. That was the silence that lived in our house for 6 months before I finally decided to leave. My name is Marcus. I'm 42 years old and I was married to Allah Chen for 14 years before I typed divorce attorney near me into my phone search bar at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. The cursor blinked at me in the darkness of our guest bedroom where I'd been sleeping for 3 weeks by then. And I remember thinking that this was it. This was how it ended. Not with screaming or thrown dishes or dramatic declarations. Just me alone in a room that smelled faintly of lavender potpourri that Isla had placed on the dresser years ago, googling lawyers while my wife slept 20 feet away in what used to be our bedroom. If you've ever felt like a ghost in your own life, you know what I'm talking about. That sensation of walking through rooms you used to fill with presence and realizing that no one would notice if you simply stopped existing there. And that's what the 6 months after I lost my job felt like. I was a senior project manager at a mid-sized tech firm in Seattle. Decent salary, good benefits. The kind of job that allowed us to buy a 3-bedroom house in Ballard with a view of the Sound if you stood on your toes in the upstairs bathroom. The kind of job that made me feel like I was doing something right, like I was building something, providing something, being something. And then in the span of a 15-minute meeting with HR, I wasn't. Market conditions, they said, restructuring, they explained. It's not personal, they assured me, as if there was any way to make being erased from an organization you'd given 8 years of your life to feel impersonal. They gave me a severance package and a cardboard box for my desk items. And I walked out of that building on a gray February afternoon, feeling like I'd been surgically removed from my own identity. I told that evening. We were in the kitchen, her chopping vegetables for a stir-fry, me standing in the doorway with my cardboard box still in my hands like some cliché from a movie about corporate casualties. "They let me go," I said. Her knife stopped mid-chop. She turned to look at me, her dark eyes scanning my face for what? Signs of devastation? Anger? I'm not sure what she was looking for, but whatever she saw made her set the knife down carefully, wipe her hands on a towel, and cross the kitchen to hug me. "Oh, Marcus, She whispered into my shoulder. I'm so sorry. I remember that hug. How her hair smelled like the jasmine shampoo she'd used since we first started dating. How her arms felt strong and certain around me. How for just a moment I felt like maybe we'd be okay because we and we had always figured things out before. But that moment passed quickly, and what replaced it was something I didn't recognize until much later. The first crack in the foundation. We'll figure it out, she said, pulling back to look at me. You'll find something better. This might even be a blessing in disguise. A blessing in disguise. That phrase would echo in my head for months afterward, when growing more bitter each time because I didn't find something better. I didn't find anything at all. The job market in tech had contracted just enough that dozens of people with my exact qualifications were all competing for the same handful of positions. I sent out applications every day. It worked. I reached out to former colleagues. I optimized my LinkedIn profile and practiced interview responses and did everything the career counselor from the unemployment office told me to do, and I got nowhere. 1 month passed, then 2, then 3, the severance money dwindled. I started calculating how long our savings would last. Allah was a physical therapist at a clinic downtown, and her salary was solid, but it wasn't enough to cover both the mortgage and all our other expenses indefinitely. We'd always been a 2-income household. We'd built our life on the assumption that we'd both keep working, both keep contributing, both keep pulling our weight. Now I was dead weight, and I could feel it in every interaction we had. Did you hear back from that startup you interviewed with? She'd ask over dinner, her tone carefully neutral, like she was trying not to pressure me, but also desperately needed good news. Not yet, I'd say, even though I knew not yet was code for they went with someone else and haven't bothered to send the rejection email. Okay, she'd respond. And then there would be that silence again, that terrible assessing silence that made me feel like I was being weighed and measured and found wanting. I stopped going to the gym because we'd canceled the membership to save money. I stopped meeting friends for drinks because I couldn't afford to split the tab. I stopped doing a lot of things actually, including most of the things that had made me feel like myself. Instead, I spent my days in a kind of purgatory. I'd wake up after Isa left for work, make coffee, sit at the desk in what we called the office, but was really just a converted spare bedroom, and send out applications until my eyes glazed over. Then I'd scroll through job listings I'd already seen. Then I'd refresh my email. Then I'd check LinkedIn. Then I'd spiral into reading articles about the changing job market and automation and age discrimination and wonder if at 42 I was already obsolete. By the time Isla got home around 6:30, I'd have dinner started because what else did I have to do? And I'd try to act like I'd had a productive day. But she could see through it. I know she could. I could see her seeing through it, which somehow made it worse. How's your day? She'd ask, setting her bag down by the door. Fine, I'd lie. Sent out some applications, had a phone screen. That's good, she'd say. But her voice carried this exhausted quality, like she was tired of offering encouragement that led nowhere. We stopped talking about my job search after a while. We stopped talking about a lot of things. Intimacy became a memory. Not just sex, though that disappeared too, gradually and then completely, but the small intimacies that make a marriage feel like a partnership rather than a cohabitation arrangement. We stopped touching each other in passing, stopped asking about each other's days in any meaningful way, stopped laughing at each other's jokes. I'd see her in the morning before she left for work, her face already set in the professional mask she wore for patients, and I'd think, I don't know who you are anymore. Worse, I'd think I don't know who I am anymore. That's the thing about losing your job when your identity is wrapped up in what you do. I wasn't just unemployed. I was untethered. I was a project manager who didn't manage projects. A provider who didn't provide. A husband who was failing at the one thing I'd always thought I'd be able to do, take care of my family. We didn't have kids. A and I had talked about it early in our marriage, but we'd always found reasons to wait. She wanted to establish her career. I wanted us to be more financially secure. We wanted to travel more first. There was always something, some reason to postpone. And eventually, the conversation just stopped happening. Now, I was grateful we'd waited, 'cause at least we didn't have children watching their father dissolve into irrelevance. But that gratitude came with its own poison. The knowledge that if we did divorce, it would be clean. No custody battles, no child support calculations, no little faces we'd have to explain things to. Just the house to sell, the assets to divide, and 2 people walking away from 14 years like it had been a lengthy but ultimately concluded experiment. I started thinking about divorce seriously sometime around the 4-month mark of unemployment. Not because of any single incident, not because we fought. We barely fought at all actually, which in hindsight was part of the problem. No, I started thinking about divorce because I could feel us becoming strangers and I didn't know how to stop it. I'd watched Isla get ready for work in the morning and she'd move through the routine with such efficiency, such complete lack of acknowledgement of my presence that I felt like I was watching her through a window rather than standing in the same room. She'd shower, dress, dry her hair, apply minimal makeup, just enough to look polished and gather her things. All while I sat on the edge of the guest bed pretending to look at my phone. "See you tonight," she'd say from the doorway, not quite meeting my eyes. "Yeah, see you," I'd respond. And she'd be gone, and I'd sit there wondering when exactly we'd become people who said, "See you tonight," instead of, "I love you." I should have said something. I should have stopped her one morning and asked, "Are we okay? Are we still we?" But I didn't because I was afraid of the answer. Because what if she said no? What if she confirmed what I already suspected? That she was staying out of obligation, out of some sense of loyalty to vows we'd made 14 years ago when we were different people who couldn't have imagined this version of us. So instead, I let the silence grow and I started noticing things. Small things at first. The way she'd take her phone into the bathroom when she showered, which she'd never done before. The way she'd tilt the screen away from me if I walked past while she was texting. The way she started working late more often. Coming home at 8 or 9 instead of 6:30, smelling like the outside world. Rain and wind and a life I wasn't part of. "Busy at the clinic?" I'd ask, trying to keep my voice casual. "Yeah, we're understaffed," she'd say, which might have been true or might have been a lie. I didn't know anymore, and I didn't trust myself to know. I told myself I was being paranoid. That unemployment had made me suspicious and insecure, that there was no reason to think Isa was being unfaithful just because she seemed distant. But the thought once planted grew roots. I started paying closer attention, noting patterns. She'd check her phone constantly, even during dinner. She'd smile at messages I couldn't see. She'd take calls in the other room, speaking in low tones I couldn't quite make out. And maybe worst of all, she seemed happier. Not when she was with me. With me, she was still that exhausted, distant version of herself. But in general, she had this energy about her, this lightness that I hadn't seen in months. It made me feel sick because if she was happier and I was the main variable that had changed in her life, or rather the variable that had become less employed, less confident, less present, then what did that say? What was I supposed to conclude? I didn't want to be the kind of person who spied on his wife. I really didn't. But desperation makes you do things you never thought you'd do. So, one day after she left for work, I went into our bedroom, her bedroom really, since I'd been exiled to the guest room. And I looked around. I didn't even know what I was looking for. Evidence, proof, some concrete thing I could point to and say, this is why everything feels wrong. Her nightstand held a book about trauma recovery and physical therapy techniques. Her dresser was neat, organized, completely ordinary. Her closet showed no signs of secret date outfits or hidden lingerie. I felt like an intruder in what had once been my own space, and I felt pathetic for being there at all. But then I saw her journal. Allah had kept a journal for as long as I'd known her. Nothing dramatic or daily diary-ish, just occasional entries when she needed to process things. She'd told me about it early in our relationship, back when we were still learning each other's rhythms and secrets, and she'd even read me a few entries once, sweet things about trips we'd taken, thoughts about her career goals. The journal was on her nightstand, a leather-bound notebook with a ribbon bookmark. And I knew that reading it would be a violation, that whatever trust we had left would evaporate the moment I opened that cover. But I picked it up anyway, my hands shaking slightly, and I told myself, I just checked the most recent entry just to see, just to know. I opened to the marked page and started reading. The entry was dated 3 days ago. I don't know how much longer I can do this. Every day feels like pretending, like I'm playing the role of a supportive wife, when really I just feel empty. Marcus won't even look at me anymore. He won't talk to me. I really talk. I mean, not just the surface level exchanges about groceries or bills. It's like he's already left, even though I'm like he's still here physically. And I'm trying so hard to be patient, to give him space to figure things out. But I'm drowning, too. I'm drowning in the silence we've created. And I don't know how to break it without breaking everything else. I stopped reading. My hands were shaking harder now. And I felt like I was going to be sick. She wasn't having an affair. She was just hurting. Hurting in the same way I was hurting maybe, but from a different angle. And I'd been so wrapped up in my own pain, my own sense of failure that I hadn't even considered that she might be struggling, too. I put the journal back exactly where I'd found it. And I left the room feeling worse than when I'd entered. Because now I had confirmation that I wasn't just imagining the distance between us. It was real. We were both drowning, both pretending, both trapped in this terrible cycle of silence and assumption. And I still didn't know how to fix it. So, I did what seemed logical at the time, which in retrospect was possibly the worst decision I could have made. I decided that maybe the kindest thing, the most honest thing, would be to just end it. To stop dragging out this painful dissolution and give us both permission to start over. I found a family law attorney with good reviews and scheduled a consultation. I didn't tell Allah. I told myself I was just exploring options, but I knew I was lying to myself. I was ready to sign papers and divide assets and tell people that it just didn't work out, which is what people say when they're too tired to explain the 1,000 small cuts that bled a marriage dry. The consultation was on a Thursday afternoon. The attorney's office was downtown in one of those buildings with 2 bright fluorescent lighting and generic landscape paintings on the walls. The attorney herself, a woman in her 50s named Patricia Kowalski, was kind but direct. "How long have you been married?" she asked, pen poised over a legal pad. 14 years. Children? No. Shared assets, a house, cars, savings accounts, what's left of them? The usual. She nodded, making notes. And is this an amicable separation? Are you both in agreement? I hesitated. I haven't told her yet that I'm filing. Patricia looked up at me, her expression neutral, but assessing. "Mr. Chen, it's Marcus. Marcus Holland." Issa kept her last name. "Marcus. Then I need to be clear with you about something. Washington is a no-fault state, which means you don't need a specific reason to file for divorce, and you don't need your spouse's permission. However, if this comes as a surprise to her, it can complicate matters significantly. Have you two discussed the possibility of divorce, separation, counseling?" "We've barely discussed anything." I admitted that's part of the problem. "Then I'd strongly recommend at least having a conversation with her before you file. Not for legal reasons. You have every right to proceed, but for practical and emotional ones. Divorces go more smoothly when both parties have time to process and prepare." I left the consultation with a folder full of paperwork and a sick feeling in my stomach. But I also left with determination because Patricia was right. I needed to tell Allah. I couldn't just ambush her with divorce papers. Whatever else had gone wrong between us, I owed her honesty. I planned to tell her that Friday evening. I'd rehearsed various versions of the conversation in my head, calm, rational, explaining that we'd both be happier apart, that we'd grown into different people, that sometimes love wasn't enough. But Friday came and I couldn't do it. She came home exhausted from a long week. And I looked at her, really looked at her, maybe for the first time in months, and I saw the weight she was carrying. The tiredness in her eyes, the tension in her shoulders, and I chickened out. Saturday, I told myself I'd do it Saturday, but Saturday was her friend Lauren's birthday, and Issa had plans to go to Lauren's house for dinner with a group of women I'd met a handful of times over the years. She seemed almost excited about it, which was such a rare thing to see from her lately that I didn't want to ruin it by dropping divorce talk into her afternoon. So, I told her to have fun, and she left around 5 o'clock wearing jeans and a blue sweater I'd always liked. And I was left alone in our too quiet house with my coward's guilt. I spent the evening the way I'd spent most evenings lately, cooking something simple, pasta with store-bought sauce, eating while watching YouTube videos I wouldn't remember 5 minutes later, cleaning up, and then retreating to the guest bedroom with my laptop. Around 10 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text from Allah. "Staying a bit later. Don't wait up." Short, functional. The kind of message you send to a roommate, not a spouse. I texted back, "Okay, have fun." And then I lay there in the guest bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about how I'd tell her the next day. Sunday morning, maybe, or Sunday afternoon. Definitely Sunday. I must have dozed off around 11 o'clock because the next thing I was aware of was the sound of the front door opening and closing. I glanced at my phone. 12:47 a.m. I heard Issa's footsteps moving through the house, slightly uneven, like maybe she'd had a couple of glasses of wine. I heard her go to the kitchen, heard the tap run, heard the familiar sounds of her nighttime routine filtering through the walls, and then I heard voices, plural. I sat up confused. Had she brought someone home? But I'd only heard the front door open once, and I would have heard multiple sets of footsteps, multiple voices saying good night. The sound was coming from the living room. Isla's voice and at least 2 others, female voices. And then I realized she'd started a video call. The walls in our house weren't thick. And the guest bedroom shared a wall with the living room. If I stayed quiet, I could hear her clearly. I should have put in headphones. Should have turned on music or gone to the bathroom or done anything other than what I did, which was sit there in the dark and listen because what I heard changed everything. I just needed to vent, Issa was saying, her voice thick with emotion. I hadn't heard from her in months. "Sorry for calling so late." "Don't apologize," another voice said. "Lauren," I recognized. "That's what we're here for." "What happened?" Nothing happened. That's the problem. Issa's voice cracked slightly. It's been 6 months of nothing happening. 6 months of watching him disappear, piece by piece, and I don't know how to stop it. There was a pause. Then a third voice, Jenna maybe, said gently. You're talking about Marcus? Of course I'm talking about Marcus, Issa, and I could hear her crying now, soft but unmistakable. I'm watching my husband vanish right in front of me, and I don't know what to do. He won't let me in. He barely speaks to me. He looks at me like I'm the enemy, and I don't know what I did wrong. My chest tightened. I felt like I was eavesdropping on something sacred and terrible. You didn't do anything wrong, Lauren said firmly. He lost his job, Allah. That's traumatic. He's probably depressed. I know that, Isla said, her voice raw. I know that. But what am I supposed to do? I've tried everything. I've tried giving him space. I've tried asking him how he's feeling. I've tried pretending everything's normal so he doesn't feel pressured. Nothing works. He just retreats further. Have you suggested therapy? Jenna asked. He won't go. I brought it up once and he looked at me like I'd suggested he admit himself to an institution. And I get it. I understand that men, especially men like Marcus, have this whole thing about mental health being a weakness, but watching him suffer without help is killing me. Is he looking for work? Lauren asked. Every day, Issa said, he sends out applications, he networks, he does everything right, and nothing is working. And I can see it breaking him. I can see him looking at himself like he's worthless. Like because he doesn't have a job and he's not a person anymore. And I want to shake him and tell him that I don't care about the money, that I don't care about the job, and that I just want him back. But he won't believe me. I was frozen in the guest bed, my heart pounding so hard I was sure it would give me away. Do you think he knows how you feel? Jenna asked quietly. There was a long silence. Then Isla said in a voice so small everyone almost didn't hear it. I don't think so. I think he thinks I'm judging him or that I'm disappointed in him. And maybe at first I was frustrated. Not disappointed, just frustrated because we were supposed to be partners. You know, we were supposed to figure things out together. But he shut me out so completely that I couldn't even try to help. And now what? Lauren prompted. Now I think he's given up on us. Issa whispered. He moved into the guest room. He barely looks at me. He answers in monosyllables. It's like living with a ghost who resents me for being alive. She was sobbing openly now, and I could hear her friends murmuring comfort, but I couldn't focus on their words because my mind was reeling. She thought I had given up on us. I love him, Issa said, her voice breaking. I love him so much it physically hurts. I love the man he was, and I love the man he could be again if he just let himself believe he's worth something. But I'm exhausted and I'm lonely and I don't know how much longer I can keep trying to reach someone who doesn't want to be reached. Have you thought about what comes next? Jenna asked carefully. If things don't change, another pause. Then I've thought about it, about separation, about whether staying is hurting us both more than leaving would. But I can't do it. I can't walk away. Not yet. Not when I know he's drowning and just needs someone to believe in him. But what if he never lets you? Lauren asked. What if he stays like this? Then I guess I'll have my answer. Issa said quietly. I'll know that whatever we had, whatever we built wasn't strong enough to survive but I need to know I tried everything first. I need to know that if we end, it's not because I gave up. God, Aya, Jenna said, you're stronger than I would be. I'm not strong, Allah said. I'm terrified. I'm terrified that one day I'll wake up and realize we waited too long. That we let the silence kill us. I'm terrified that he's already decided I'm not worth fighting for. And I'm terrified that I'm going to lose the only man I've ever loved because he won't let me love him. The conversation continued, but I couldn't hear it anymore over the roaring in my ears. I sat in the dark guest bedroom, my wife's words echoing in my head, and I felt like the biggest fool who'd ever lived because she just described in painful detail exactly how I'd been feeling. The fear, the loneliness, the sense that we were losing each other. But from her perspective, from the other side of the wall I'd built between us, I'd thought she was disappointed in me, resentful, distant by choice. But she was distant because I'd pushed her away. She was exhausted because she'd been trying to reach me while I retreated. She was lonely because I decided somewhere along the way that I was protecting her from my failure by not burdening her with it. I'd been so consumed by my own pain that I hadn't seen hers. And I'd been planning to serve her with divorce papers. I'd been planning to walk away from someone who loved me so much it physically hurts. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I felt nauseous, ashamed, horrified at myself. I heard her end the call, heard on her moving around the living room, and then heard her footsteps in the hallway. They paused outside the guest bedroom door. I held my breath, wondering if she'd knock, if she'd come in. If this would be the moment when everything finally broke open. But after a few seconds, she moved on and I heard the master bedroom door close softly. I lay back down, but there was no possibility of sleep. My mind was racing, replaying everything. The past 6 months, the past 14 years, every moment of silence and assumption and failure to communicate. I'd been ready to throw away my marriage because I'd assumed I knew what Isa was thinking, what she was feeling, what she wanted, and I'd been completely catastrophically wrong. The next morning, Sunday morning, the day I'd planned to tell her I wanted a divorce. I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I couldn't undo the past 6 months. I couldn't take back the distance or the silence or the pain. But I could stop making things worse. I could stop assuming. I could stop retreating. I could start fighting for us. I found her in the kitchen making coffee, still in her pajamas. Her eyes were slightly red, and I wondered how much sleep she'd gotten. Probably not much more than me. Allah, I said from the doorway. She turned, surprise, flickering across her face. We hadn't had a real conversation in weeks. Hadn't sought each other out. This break-in pattern seemed to startle her. Yeah, she said carefully. Can we talk? Something shifted in her expression. Hope maybe mixed with weariness. Okay. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd had hundreds of meals and conversations over the years. And for a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said, I've been a terrible husband. She started to protest, but I held up my hand. Let me finish, please. I've been terrible because I shut you out. Because I decided that my failure was something I had to carry alone. And in doing that, I made you feel like I didn't need you, like I didn't want you. And that wasn't true. It was never true. Her eyes were wide, fixed on me with an intensity I hadn't seen in months. I lost my job, I continued, my voice rough. And somewhere along the way, I lost myself, too. I let what I do become who I am. And when I didn't have that anymore, I didn't know how to be anything, especially not a husband. Especially not your husband because you deserve someone who has their life together and I felt like I was failing at everything. Marcus, I heard you last night, I said quickly before I could lose my nerve on the video call with Lauren and Jenna. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I heard you and I heard what you said about us, about me, and I need you to know something. I took a shaky breath. I was planning to ask for a divorce, I said. I had a consultation with an attorney. I was going to tell you yesterday, but I chickened out and then I heard you last night and I realized I'd been about to make the biggest mistake of my life. Isa's face went pale. What? I thought you wanted out, I said. I thought you were staying out of obligation. I thought I was doing you a favor by letting you go, but I was wrong. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face, and I reached across the table to take her hands. She didn't pull away. I love you, I said, and my own voice was breaking. I love you. And I've been treating you like the enemy when you're the only person I've ever wanted on my side. And I don't know how to fix what I broke, but I want to try. If you'll let me, if it's not too late. For a long moment, she just looked at me, tears falling, and I braced myself for her to say it was too late, that I'd hurt her too badly, that she was done trying. But then she squeezed my hands and said, it's not too late. God, Marcus, it's not too late. And then we were both crying, both holding on to each other's hands like lifelines. Both finally being honest. I didn't know what to do, she said through tears. I didn't know how to help you without making things worse. You seemed so angry all the time or so sad, and I didn't know if you wanted space or comfort or what. And I was trying so hard to be supportive without being pushy. And I think I just ended up being distant instead. You weren't distant, I said. I was. I pushed you away because I was ashamed. Because I felt like I wasn't enough anymore. You've always been enough, she said fiercely. With or without a job, with or without money, you're enough, Marcus. You're everything. We talked for 2 hours that morning. Really talked, maybe for the first time in half a year. We said things we should have said months ago. We admitted fears and resentments and pain we'd been carrying silently. We cried and apologized and started slowly to rebuild the bridge between us. It wasn't a magic fix. That conversation didn't suddenly make everything perfect, but it was a beginning. The weeks that followed were hard in different ways. I made an appointment with a therapist, something I'd been resistant to because of exactly the toxic masculinity Allah had described to her friends. But I went and I started unpacking the way I'd tied my self-worth to my career. The depression I'd been sliding into, the fear that had been driving all my worst decisions. Isa and I started couples counseling, too. We needed help navigating the damage we'd done, and we needed tools for communicating better. Our counselor, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation to Isa, though they joked about it, was patient and insightful. "You're both grieving," she told us in one of our early sessions. "You're grieving the life you thought you'd have, the stability you thought you'd built, and you've been grieving separately, which made you feel alone even though you were together." She was right. We'd been in parallel pain, close enough to touch, but somehow unable to reach each other, but slowly with work, we started reaching. I stopped sleeping in the guest room. That was Allah's idea, actually. About 3 weeks after our kitchen table conversation, she stood in the doorway of the guest room while I was getting ready for bed and said, "I want you back in our room." "If you want to be there, I want to be there," I said immediately. That first night back in our bed was strange. We lay there in the dark, not touching at first. Both of us hyper aware of the space between us. But then Allah reached out and took my hand and I squeezed back and it felt like something essential clicking back into place. We started small, holding hands while watching TV, cooking dinner together, asking each other real questions, and giving real answers instead of the surface level exchanges we've been trading. "How is therapy?" she'd ask. "Hard," I'd say. "We talked about shame today, about how I've been carrying this belief that I'm only valuable if I'm productive." "What did your therapist say?" "That it's a lie. That my value isn't conditional. That even if I never worked another day in my life, I'd still be a person worth loving." "She's right," Aya would say, squeezing my hand. "She's absolutely right." And slowly, so slowly, I started believing it. I kept looking for work, but with less desperation. I expanded my search beyond project management, started considering adjacent fields, even took on some freelance consulting gigs that paid barely anything, but gave me something to do, something to contribute. And somewhere around the 2-month mark after our kitchen table conversation, something shifted. I realized I was happy. Not because my circumstances had changed. I still didn't have a full-time job. We were still living carefully on Isa's salary and my dwindling savings, but because I'd stopped measuring my worth by external metrics. Because I had my wife back. Because we were building something real again. One evening about 3 months after I'd overheard that phone call, Allah and I were sitting on our back porch watching the sunset. She was curled up next to me on the old love seat we'd bought at a yard sale years ago, her head on my shoulder, my arm around her waist. "I've been thinking," she said quietly. About how close we came to losing this." I tightened my arm around her. "Me, too. I'm glad you heard me that night," she said. "I mean, I'm mortified that you heard me ugly crying to my friends about our marriage. But I'm glad because I don't think I could have said those things to you directly. Not then. I was too scared. I'm glad I heard too," I said, even though it was the most painful thing I've ever experienced. Because it was exactly what I needed to hear. That you still loved me. That you hadn't given up. That I wasn't the only one fighting to hold on. She lifted her head to look at me. "I never gave up. I was tired and sad and lonely, but I never stopped loving you. Not for a second." "I know," I said. "I know that now." She kissed me then, soft and sweet. And I felt something settle in my chest. Something that had been twisted and wrong for months. "What do you think would have happened if you hadn't heard me?" she asked after a moment. "If you'd gone through with the divorce," I considered it. "I think we both would have been miserable. I think we would have spent the rest of our lives wondering what would have happened if we'd just talked to each other, if we'd been braver." "I don't want to live like that," she said, avoiding hard conversations because they're uncomfortable. "Me neither," I said. "So, we make a deal. No more silence. No more assuming. If something's wrong, we say it. Even if it's scary, especially if it's scary." She held out her pinky. "Deal." I linked my pinky with hers and we sat there as the sun painted the sky orange and pink and I thought about how close I'd come to throwing this away. I got a job offer 4 months after our kitchen table conversation. It wasn't the job I'd been expecting to get. It was with a non-profit that did technology training for underserved communities and the pay was about 30% less than what I'd been making before. But the work was meaningful. The team was great. And the director who hired me said something during my final interview that stuck with me. "We're not looking for someone who knows all the answers. We're looking for someone who's willing to figure things out alongside the communities we serve. Someone who's humble enough to learn." Humble. That was a word I'd learned a lot about in therapy. I took the job and I loved it almost immediately. It was different from corporate project management. Messier, less predictable, more human. But that was exactly what I needed. Isa was thrilled. Not because of the paycheck, though the financial relief helped, but because she could see I was excited about something again. "You seem like yourself," she told me one evening after I'd come home energized from a particularly good day at work. "I feel like myself," I said. "Better than myself, maybe." Like a version of me that's learned some things. What kinds of things? That my value isn't about what I produce. That asking for help isn't weakness. That marriage is about being honest even when it's hard. That the person I married is the best thing that ever happened to me. And I almost let her go because I was too proud to admit I was struggling. She smiled. The real smile that reached her eyes, the one I'd missed so much during those dark months. We almost let each other go, she corrected. We both made mistakes, but we're here now, and that's what matters. We celebrated 1 year of recommitment, our term for the anniversary of our kitchen table conversation, by going back to the restaurant where we'd had our first date 14 years earlier. It was a small Italian place in Fremont, family owned with red checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles. Do you remember what we talked about? Allah asked over pasta. On our first date. Vaguely, I remember being terrified you were out of my league, she laughed. You were sweet. You asked me about my work and you actually listened. Most guys I dated just wanted to talk about themselves. And now you're stuck with a guy who talks about himself too much in therapy. Joe, and I'm not stuck, she said, reaching across the table to take my hand on. I'm exactly where I want to be. We'd rebuilt something stronger than what we'd had before, I realized. Not because the foundation had been weak, but because we'd learned how to repair it together. We'd learned that silence was poison. That assumptions were dangerous. That vulnerability was strength. And we'd learned that marriage isn't about never struggling. It's about choosing to struggle together. There's a specific kind of silence that fills a home when love is healing. It's not the suffocating quiet of pain unspoken. It's not the tense absence of words that need to be said. It's the comfortable silence of two people who've run out of urgent things to say because they've already said the important things. The peaceful quiet of a Sunday morning spent reading separate sections of the newspaper in companionable stillness, knowing that if either person needs to speak, the other will listen. That's the silence that lives in our house now. I'm sitting in what used to be the guest bedroom, but is now my actual office. Helped me set it up properly with a real desk and good lighting and plants on the windowsill. I can hear her in the living room talking to a patient on the phone, giving guidance about exercises and recovery timelines in that calm, professional voice she uses. And I feel grateful. Grateful that I heard her that night. Grateful that I was brave enough to change course. Grateful that she was willing to rebuild with me. I still think about those divorce papers sometimes, about how close I came to signing them, about what my life would look like now if I had empty probably or filled with regrets I'd never quite be able to name on. But I didn't sign them. I tore them up the morning after our kitchen table conversation, standing over the recycling bin, ripping them into small pieces like I could physically destroy the future they represented. Isa found me doing it. What was that? She asked. A mistake, I said. A big one that I'm not making. She kissed my cheek and squeezed my shoulder, and that was all the acknowledgement either of us needed. We tell our story sometimes when friends are struggling, when someone mentions feeling distant from their partner or lost in their own life or hopeless about their relationship. We tell them about the silence that almost killed us. About the assumptions that nearly destroyed us, about the phone call that saved us. Communication. Isa always says that's the whole thing. Not just talking, but really communicating, saying the scary things, admitting the hard things. And listening, I add, actually listening, not just waiting for your turn to talk. Sometimes people thank us for sharing. Sometimes they look uncomfortable, like we've shown them too much. But I don't regret being honest about how close we came to the edge. 'Cause if our story helps even one couple step back from their own edge, it's worth the vulnerability. Last month, on a rainy Tuesday evening, Isla came home from work and found me in the kitchen making dinner. Chicken stir fry, one of our standards. She wrapped her arms around me from behind and rested her cheek against my back. I love you, she said, not in response to anything I'd said or done. Not prompted by an occasion or anniversary, just because. I love you, too, I said, turning in her arms to face her. More than anything, more than having a job, she teased. Way more than having a job, I said. Seriously, the job is great. But you're everything. She kissed me soft and lingering. And I thought about how different this moment was from the ones we'd had a year and a half ago when every interaction felt fraught and loaded and wrong. What made you want to tell me that? I asked. That I love you. I mean, she shrugged. I was just thinking about us, about how we almost lost each other, and I wanted to make sure you knew. I know, I said. I always know now. Good, she said. Don't forget. I won't. I promise never again. And I meant it. If you've ever felt like a ghost in your own life, I hope you know you're not alone. I hope you know that the silence isn't permanent, that the distance can be crossed, that the assumptions can be challenged. I hope you know that sometimes the scariest thing being honest about pain, about failure, about fear is also the most necessary thing. I hope you find the courage I almost didn't have to speak, to listen, to stay, to fight. Because marriage isn't about being perfect. It's not about never struggling or never doubting or never making mistakes. It's about choosing every day to show up, to be honest, to love someone even when, especially when it's hard. Isa and I aren't perfect. We still have hard days. We still disagree. We still have to work at this, at keeping the lines of communication open. But we're committed to each other, to the work, to the belief that what we have is worth fighting for. And on the hard days when I'm tempted to retreat into silence or assumption or pride, I remember that phone call. I remember hearing Isla say she loved me so much it physically hurts. I remember how close I came to walking away from that love. And I remember that I tore up those divorce papers for a reason, because some mistakes are too big to make. And losing Isla would have been the biggest mistake of my life. So instead, I choose to stay. I choose to speak. I choose to love her loudly and clearly every day for the rest of my life. And she chooses the same. That's the thing about marriage, I think. It's not about the big romantic gestures or the perfect moments or the fairy tale ending. It's about the choice, the daily deliberate, sometimes difficult choice to keep choosing each other. We choose each other every day, even on the hard days, especially on the hard days. And that makes all the difference. The rain has picked up outside, drumming against the windows in the steady rhythm that's common in Seattle autumns. I can hear Isla moving around in the kitchen now, starting dinner, even though I said I'd cook tonight. I close my laptop and head to join her. And when I enter the kitchen, she looks up and smiles. The real smile, the one that says, "I'm home." "Hey," she says, "I thought you were working." "I was, but I heard you in here and I wanted to help. You just want to make sure I don't burn the chicken like last time." She teases that, too. I admit, and she laughs. We cook together, moving around each other with the ease of people who've learned each other's rhythms. We talk about our days, the frustrating parts, the funny parts, the mundane parts. We talk about weekend plans and grocery lists, and whether we need to finally replace the bathroom faucet that's been leaking. Normal things, daily things, the small conversations that make up a life together. And as we sit down to eat, I realize this is what I almost lost. Not the big moments or the dramatic declarations, but this. The ordinary magic of sharing a meal with someone who knows you and loves you anyway. "What are you thinking about?" Allah asks, noticing my expression. "How lucky I am," I say honestly. "Sap," she says, but she's smiling. "Your sap," I counter. "My sap," she agrees. We eat in comfortable silence for a while, and then Isa says, "I saw Lauren today. She asked about us." "Yeah. What did you tell her?" "That we're good. Really good. That the work was worth it." "And what did I say?" "It is." She reaches across the table to squeeze my hand, and I squeeze back, and I think about how this simple gesture, the reaching out, the connection, the physical reminder that we're together is something I took for granted before. Something I'll never take for granted again. After dinner, we clean up together and then we settle on the couch with tea and a movie neither of us has seen. Halfway through, Isla falls asleep against my shoulder, her breathing deep and even. And I carefully extract my arm to grab a blanket and drape it over her. I should probably wake her and suggest we go to bed, but I don't. I just sit there watching her sleep, feeling the weight of her head on my shoulder, and I let myself feel grateful. Grateful for second chances. Grateful for uncomfortable truths overheard at the exact right moment. Grateful for a woman who loved me even when I made it nearly impossible. Grateful for the courage we both found to try again. The movie plays on, but I'm not watching it. I'm watching my wife, and I'm thinking about all the versions of this moment that could have existed if I'd made different choices. In one version, I'm alone in an apartment somewhere eating takeout and wondering what Isa is doing, whether she's happier without me. In another version, we're going through the motions of a dead marriage, living parallel lives in the same house, too stubborn or scared to acknowledge what we've lost. But in this version, the real version, the one we fought for, we're here together, healing, growing, learning to love each other better every day. This is the version I choose. This is the version we choose. The movie ends when I gently wake Isla. "Hey, sleepyhead. Let's get you to bed." She blinks at me, disoriented. "I fell asleep about an hour ago. Why didn't you wake me?" "You looked peaceful," I say. "And I liked sitting with you." She smiles, still half asleep, and takes my hand as we head to the bedroom. We go through our nighttime routine, brushing teeth, changing into pajamas, setting alarms with the kind of coordination that comes from years of practice. And then we're in bed in the dark and Isla curls up against me like she's been doing for the past year. And I wrap my arm around her and I think this is everything. "Marcus," she murmurs. "Yeah. Thank you for what?" For staying, for fighting, for loving me enough to tear up those papers. I kiss the top of her head. Thank you for giving me a reason to always, she whispers. And as we drift off to sleep, I make a silent promise to the universe, to Allah, to myself. I will never take this for granted again. I will never let silence replace honesty. I will never assume I know what she's thinking instead of asking. I will never retreat when things get hard. I will show up. I will be present. I will love her out loud every day for the rest of my life. Because that's what marriage is. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of commitment. Not the lack of problems, but the willingness to face them together. Not perfection. Just persistence and love. So much love. 1 year later, I'm standing in our kitchen on a Sunday morning making pancakes while Isla sits at the table reading something on her tablet. Sun streams through the windows catching the dust motes floating in the air. And the whole scene is so simple and beautiful that I have to pause and just take it in. What? Isa asks, noticing my stare. Nothing, I say. Just this us. How good it is. She sets down her tablet and comes over to wrap her arms around me from behind. It is good, isn't it? The best, I say. We've been in a good place for a while now. More than a year since our kitchen table conversation. More than a year since I tore up those divorce papers. And every day has been a choice to keep building, keep communicating, keep loving each other better than we did the day before. It hasn't been perfect. We've had arguments and frustrations and moments when the old patterns threaten to resurface. But we've also had tools now, therapy, communication techniques, a shared commitment to honesty that help us navigate the rough patches without falling back into silence. My job at the nonprofit has been incredible. I was promoted to director of programs last month, which came with a modest raise and a lot more responsibility. But more importantly, I wake up excited to go to work most days, which is something I'd never experienced in corporate life. Isa's practice has been thriving. She took on a more senior role at her clinic, mentoring younger therapists and developing new treatment protocols. I can see how much she loves it, how fulfilled she is by the work. And we've started talking about kids again. Not urgently, not with pressure, just exploring the possibility. Opening the conversation back up after years of letting it lie dormant. I think we'd be good parents, Isa said a few weeks ago, lying in bed after a particularly nice dinner with friends who'd brought their toddler along. I think we've learned enough about communication and partnership that we could actually handle it. You think? I asked. I think, she said. If you want to. I want to, I said. Not right away, but someday soon. Yeah. She'd smiled at me in the dark, and I'd seen the future there. Not the perfect Pinterest-worthy version, but the real one. The messy, beautiful, hard, wonderful reality of building a life together. Now, as I flip pancakes and Allah moves back to the table with her coffee, I think about how I almost missed this. How I was hours, maybe minutes, away from setting into motion a series of events that would have destroyed the best thing in my life. And I think about that night, the night I overheard her on the phone, and how it felt like the universe intervening, giving me information I needed, showing me the truth I'd been too scared to see. You know what? I realized, I say, plating the pancakes and bringing them to the table. What's that? Isa asks, accepting her plate with a smile. That the worst night of my life was also the best night of my life. She knows immediately what I'm talking about. When you heard me crying to Lauren and Jenna. Yeah, it was awful hearing how much pain you were in, realizing how badly I'd failed you. But it was also the wake-up call I needed. The thing that made me stop and actually look at what I was about to throw away. Divine intervention, she says with a slight smile. Maybe, I say, or just dumb luck. Either way, I'm grateful. We eat in comfortable silence for a few minutes and then Isa says, I'm grateful too, for you, for us, for the fact that we were both willing to do the work even when it was hard. We're pretty great, aren't we? I joke. The greatest, she agrees. And as we sit there in our sunny kitchen, eating pancakes on a random Sunday morning, I realize this is what happiness looks like. Not the big moments or the grand gestures, but this. The simple pleasure of breakfast with someone you love. Someone who's seen you at your worst and chose to stay. Someone who fought for you when you'd stopped fighting for yourself. Someone who loves you not in spite of your flaws, but because of your whole, complicated, beautiful self. That's the real fairy tale, I think. Not the prince and princess riding off into the sunset, but the couple who stumble through the dark forest together, moon, who get lost and scared and angry and who choose every day to keep walking side by side. That's us. That's our story. And I wouldn't change a single page. Epilogue. 3 years later. Our daughter Maya is 18 months old and currently covered in spaghetti sauce, banging her sippy cup on her high chair tray like it's a drum. Allah is trying to wipe her face while Maya shrieks with laughter and squirms away, and I'm standing in the doorway with my phone out recording the chaos. You're not helping. A call's over to me, but she's laughing too. I'm documenting, I say, for posterity for her future therapy sessions. Our daughter's going to need therapy because of the spaghetti incident? Aya asks, finally succeeding in wiping most of the sauce off Ma's face. Among other things, I joke, and Isla throws the washcloth at me. I catch it and come over to help extract Mia from the high chair. She immediately wraps her sauce, sticky hands around my neck, and I don't even care. This is my life now. Covered in various child-related substances, exhausted in ways I didn't know were possible, and happier than I've ever been. After we get Maya cleaned up and settled in the living room with her blocks, Isa and I collapsed on the couch together. It's barely 7:30 p.m. and we're both already counting down to bedtime. Remember when we thought we were tired before we had a kid? Ula says, I remember thinking I understood what tired meant, I say. I was adorably naive. She laughs and leans against me. Worth it, though. So worth it. I agree. Watching Maya stack blocks with intense concentration and her little tongue poking out the side of her mouth the way Isa's does when she's focused on something. We'd gotten pregnant about 6 months after we started trying. The pregnancy had been relatively smooth and Maya's birth had been well intense and terrifying and the most amazing thing I'd ever witnessed. Watching Isla bring our daughter into the world had given me a whole new level of respect for what she was capable of. And being a parent had given me a whole new understanding of what unconditional love meant. It had also tested our marriage in new ways. The sleep deprivation, the stress, the complete upheaval of our routine, it all could have driven us apart if we'd let it. But we didn't let it. We remembered the lessons we'd learned during our dark period. We communicated. We asked for help when we needed it. We made time for each other even when time felt impossible to find. We were honest about the hard parts and celebrated the good parts and reminded each other on the really tough days that we were a team. I was thinking, Isa says now while watching Maya play, about how different things could have been, different how if we'd divorced, if you'd actually gone through with it, we wouldn't have this. She gestures around at our house, at our daughter, at the life we've built. We wouldn't have her. The thought sends a chill through me. I don't like to think about that alternate timeline. Me neither, she says. But sometimes I do, and it makes me so grateful that you heard me that night, that you chose to stay. We chose, I correct. Both of us. Both of us, she agrees. Maya toddles over then, holding out a block to me. Duh, she says, because that's one of her 5 current words, along with mama, no, more, and uh-oh. I take the block solemnly. Thank you, Maya. This is a beautiful block. She beams at me and toddles away to get another one. And Allah says quietly, you're a good dad. You're a good mom. I count her. We're pretty good at this whole family thing, she says. And we are not perfect. We mess up plenty. We're learning as we go. We're exhausted all the time, but we're good. We're solid. We're together. That night, after Maya is finally asleep, after 3 stories, 2 songs, and 1 minor meltdown about not wanting to put on pajamas, Allah and I have what we've started calling sacred couch time. 30 minutes of just sitting together before we're both too tired to function. I love our life, Allah says, her head on my shoulder. Me, too, I say. Even the exhausting parts. Especially the exhausting parts, she says. Because it means we're building something real. I think about that, about how we've built a life from almost ruins. How we've created a family from the ashes of a marriage that nearly ended. How we've turned pain into strength and silence into communication and fear into love. Do you ever miss how things were before? I ask. When we could sleep in and be spontaneous and weren't constantly covered in various baby fluids. Sometimes, she admits. But then I think about what we have now and there's no competition. This is better. This is everything I wanted, even if I didn't know I wanted it. Yeah, I say. Same. We sit in comfortable silence for a while. And then Allah says, you know what I think about sometimes? What? That phone call with Lauren and Jenna. How you could have just not listened or listened and not changed your mind. How there were so many points where this could have gone differently. Sliding doors, I say, referencing the movie we watched once about parallel timelines. Exactly. In one version, we're divorced right now. Maybe remarried to other people. Maybe miserable and wondering what went wrong. And in this version, we're here with Maya with each other building this beautiful, complicated life together. I like this version, I say. Me, too. She says, I really like this version. Later, lying in bed, I think about what she said, about the different timelines, the different choices, the moment when everything could have shattered, but somehow miraculously held together. And I think about all the people out there who are where we were, standing on the edge of giving up, convinced that their partner has stopped loving them, too proud or scared or hurt to just ask. I think about the silence that's killing marriages all over the world every day. And I hope they find their moment, their kitchen table conversation, their wake-up call. I hope they choose to stay, to fight, to love loudly. Because marriage is hard, partnership is hard. Life is hard. But it's so much easier when you do it together. When you choose honesty over assumption, when you choose vulnerability over pride, when you choose love again and again, even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. That's the secret. I think the thing nobody tells you about marriage. It's not about finding the perfect person or having the perfect relationship or never struggling. It's about finding someone worth struggling with. Someone worth fighting for. Someone you choose over and over in 1,000 small ways every day. Isa stirs beside me and I pull her closer and she murmurs something in her sleep that sounds like my name. And I think this is what I almost lost. But I didn't lose it. We saved it together. And that makes all the difference. If you're reading this and you recognize yourself in our story, if you're living in that terrible silence, if you're considering walking away, if you've convinced yourself that your partner doesn't love you anymore, I want to tell you something. Ask. Just ask. Have the scary conversation. Say the hard things. Be vulnerable enough to admit you're hurting. Because you might be surprised by what you hear. You might find out that the person you thought had given up is actually just waiting for permission to try again. You might discover that the distance you've been feeling is mutual and that you're both desperate to close it, but neither of you knows how. You might save something you didn't realize could still be saved. Or you might find out that it really is over, that you've grown into different people who want different things, and that's painful, but at least it's honest. But either way, you'll know. You'll have tried. You won't spend the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you'd just been brave enough to speak. Isa and I got lucky. We got a second chance, courtesy of a conversation I was never meant to hear. But you don't need to rely on luck or eavesdropping. You can create your own second chance. You can tear up your own metaphorical divorce papers. You can choose to stay, to fight, to love. All you have to do is speak and listen and believe that what you have, what you built together is worth fighting for because it probably is. It probably, really is. Final reflection. It's Sunday morning again. Years removed from that other Sunday morning when I almost told Allah I wanted a divorce. The sun is streaming through the same kitchen windows, but everything else is different. Better. Mia is at the table with us now, eating pancakes with slightly better coordination than when she was 18 months old, though she's still managing to get syrup in her hair. Isa is telling her a story about a brave little girl who goes on an adventure, and Maya is listening with wide eyes, occasionally interjecting with, "And then what?" I'm watching them, my wife and my daughter, and I'm thinking about choices. About the choice I almost made to walk away. About the choice Isa made to keep loving me even when I made it nearly impossible. About the choice we both made to do the hard work of rebuilding. About all the small choices we've made every day since then, to keep choosing each other. And I'm thinking about how marriage is really just that, an infinite series of choices. To stay or to go, to speak or to stay silent, to assume or to ask, to give up or to try again, to love or to let fear win. Every day we make these choices, sometimes consciously, sometimes without even realizing it. And the accumulation of those choices, thousands and thousands of them over years, becomes your life, becomes your love story, becomes your family. I chose well in the end. We both did. But it was so close. "Daddy, more syrup," Mia demands, holding out her plate. "Say, please," Isla prompts. "Please," Mia says, beaming. I pour more syrup and Isla catches my eye over our daughter's head and she smiles at me with so much love and warmth that I feel it in my chest. "I love you." I mouth. "I love you." She mouths back. And Maya, oblivious to our exchange, goes back to demolishing her pancakes with the enthusiasm that only a small child can muster for breakfast foods. This is it. This is the life I almost lost. The family I almost never had. The love I almost threw away. And I'm grateful. So grateful that I was in the right place at the right time to overhear the truth I needed to hear. That Allah loved me, that she hadn't given up, that we were worth fighting for. That's the real story, I think. Not that I was ready to divorce my wife, but that I heard what she really felt and chose to fight instead. That we both chose to fight and we won. Not against each other, but against the silence and the fear and the pride that almost destroyed us. We won our marriage back. And that victory, quiet and private and unwitnessed by anyone but us, is the most important thing I've ever done. The best choice I've ever made. The greatest love story I'll ever live. So if you're out there standing where I stood, contemplating walking away, stop, listen, ask, fight. 'Cause the person you're about to leave might be waiting for the exact same thing you are. Permission to try again. Hope that it's not too late. Proof that you still care. And if you give them that, if you're brave enough to be vulnerable and honest and scared together, you might just save something beautiful, something worth saving, something that years from now you'll look back on and think, thank God we chose each other. Thank God we stayed. Thank God for second chances and scary conversations and the courage to try again. Thank God for love. The messy, imperfect, hard-won kind. The kind that saves you when you're drowning. The kind that rebuilds what's broken. The kind that says, I choose you even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. That's the kind of love worth having. That's the kind of love worth fighting for. And that's the kind of love I have with Allah. Still, always, forever.
That brings this story to an end, and that one was definitely a wild ride. Let me know what you think in the comments. Now, let's move into the next story, titled,
I stood alone by my mom's hospital bed as she passed other rooms echoed with supportive families. Mine stayed silent. No dad, no siblings, no calls, not even a fake excuse. As the doctor marked the time, a nurse handed me her final letter. Inside were names, a key, and one chilling instruction. Have you ever witnessed an entire medical family, doctors, surgeons, hospital directors abandon their dying mother because she couldn't boost their careers anymore? That's exactly what I lived through 3 months ago. While Mom lay dying in Seattle Presbyterian, my brother Marcus was performing his 200th surgery just 3 floors up. My sister Victoria was in a board meeting 2 blocks away. 47 family members, all healthcare professionals, and not one could spare an hour for the woman who built their empire. They didn't even send flowers, just silence, as if she'd already been erased from the family legacy. But here's what they didn't know. Mom had been planning for this moment for 15 years. The letter the nurse handed me as Mom took her last breath didn't just contain her final words. It contained the keys to a $340 million medical empire they thought they controlled. Hi, I'm AITAH, 34 years old, and today I'm sharing how my dying mother's secret letter turned me from the family failure into their worst nightmare. The Hodge's name carries weight in Seattle's medical community. For 3 generations, we've produced surgeons, hospital administrators, and medical researchers. My grandfather founded AITAH Medical Group in 1954, turning it from a single clinic into what's now a $340 million healthcare empire with 12 facilities across Washington state. My brother Marcus, at 42, was the crown jewel, a cardiac surgeon who performed over 200 surgeries annually at Seattle Presbyterian. The walls of our family home were covered with his accolades. Top 40 under 40, Surgeon of the Year, photos with senators and governors. Every family gathering started with someone asking about his latest life-saving procedure. My sister Victoria, 38, ran the largest private hospital in Seattle with the efficiency of a military general. She'd turned a failing facility profitable within 18 months, and the board treated her like she walked on water. At family dinners, she'd casually mention her lunch with the mayor or her upcoming Harvard Medical School guest lecture. Then there was me, the Wharton MBA who chose strategy consulting over stethoscopes, the one who built algorithms instead of operating rooms. In my family's eyes, my position as strategic director at a Fortune 500 tech company meant nothing. Anyone can work with computers, Marcus would say, but can you hold a human heart in your hands? The irony, while they were saving lives one at a time, I was designing healthcare AI systems that could diagnose rare diseases across millions of patients. But in the AITAH family, if you didn't wear a white coat, you might as well be invisible. The question that haunted me, why did Mom spend her final moments with the family failure instead of her celebrated children? Christmas 2023 showed me exactly where I stood in the family hierarchy. The annual AITAH holiday party at Marcus Bellevue Mansion was our family's version of a medical conference. 47 relatives, all healthcare professionals gathering to compare achievements over champagne and surgical war stories. When I arrived, the seating assignments told me everything. Marcus had placed me at the children's table, literally. I sat between my 8-year-old nephew and my 10-year-old cousin using a paper plate while the adults dined on china 20 feet away. At least the kids might have a future in medicine, Marcus announced during his toast, gesturing toward the children's table. Unlike some people who waste their potential on what is it you do again, Alana Instagram strategies? The room erupted in laughter, 47 voices joining in perfect harmony, their amusement echoing off the vaulted ceilings. Victoria added, "Remember when Alana wanted to be a doctor? Thank God she figured out her limitations early." I smiled and nodded, playing the role they'd assigned me. What they didn't know was that 3 hours earlier, I'd signed a $500,000 consulting contract with tech venture partners to architect their healthcare division's IPO strategy. My bonus alone was more than Victoria's annual salary, but I kept quiet. In my family, money from tech was fake money, not earned through real work. Uncle Robert, a semi-retired anesthesiologist, patted my head like I was one of the children. Don't worry, dear. Not everyone can handle the pressure of real responsibility. I spent the rest of the evening helping my young tablemates with their desserts, listening to Marcus regale the adults with the story of his 200th surgery, wondering if Mom noticed how her children treated each other. 5 years. That's how long I'd been the AITAH Medical Group's unpaid IT consultant. Foolishly believing that contributing my expertise would earn me a place at the family table when their patient management system crashed in 2019. Who did Marcus call at 2 a.m.? Me. I spent 70 hours rebuilding their entire digital infrastructure, implementing security protocols that prevented a ransomware attack that hit 3 other Seattle hospitals. The other hospitals lost millions. Hodges Medical Group didn't lose a cent. When Victoria needed to modernize her hospital's diagnostic systems, I designed an AI-assisted triage protocol that reduced wait times by 40% and increased diagnostic accuracy by 23%. The implementation saved 18 lives in its first month alone. Documented, measurable lives saved through technology I created. 2,000 hours of work over 5 years, 0 mentions in the annual reports, 0 acknowledgments at board meetings. When the Seattle Times praised Hodges Medical Group's innovative digital transformation, Victoria told the reporter, "We hired the best consultants money could buy." She'd never paid me $1. "It's family helping family," Marcus would say whenever I submitted an invoice. "You wouldn't charge your own blood, would you? Besides, consider it your contribution to real medicine." The equation was simple. 2,000 hours, millions in saved revenue, 0 recognition. That was my value in the AITAH family ledger. The email arrived a week before Mom died. "Alana, we need to talk about your future. Come alone. Don't tell your siblings." It was the last message she ever sent me. And even now, sitting in Morrison & Associates waiting room 3 months later, I could feel my phone burning with its weight. Hodges Medical Group wasn't just a family business. It was a $340 million empire that controlled 12 facilities, employed 3,000 people, and held contracts with every major insurer in the Pacific Northwest. And Marcus was about to destroy it all. The merger documents with SoFarm International had been circulating quietly among board members. Marcus thought he was being discreet, but I'd seen the terms during one of my unpaid consulting sessions. They were offering $180 million for a 51% stake, barely half of what the company was worth. The catch? Marcus would receive a $50 million facilitation fee, while our mother's vision of community-focused healthcare would be dissolved into a profit-maximizing machine. 70 years of legacy built by my grandparents' calloused hands and my mother's brilliant mind about to be sold for Marcus's golden parachute. The 2 free clinics Mom had personally funded would close within 6 months. The charity ward she'd insisted on maintaining would be converted to luxury suites. Everything Eleanor AITAH had built would be gutted for quarterly earnings. If I stayed silent, I'd lose more than money. I'd lose the last piece of my mother that remained in this world. Her belief that medicine should serve everyone, not just those who could afford it. But speaking up meant war. Marcus controlled the board through charm and intimidation. Victoria commanded loyalty through fear. They had 47 family members who'd choose their side without question. I had a laptop, a strategic mind, and whatever Mom had hidden in that safety deposit box at Chase Private Banking. The stakes were clear. $340 million, 3,000 jobs, Mom's legacy, and my last chance to prove I belonged in this family. Not as the overlooked tech sister, but as a true Hodges heir. Mom's letter was written on her personal stationery, the expensive cream paper she'd used for important occasions. Her handwriting, usually so elegant, showed the tremor of her final days. "My dearest Alana, you're reading this because I'm gone, and you're probably sitting alone while your siblings divide what they think I've left behind. They see stethoscopes and surgical suites. I see strategy and systems. They saved hundreds. You'll save millions. For 15 years, I've watched you build empires in Silicon Valley while your siblings built their egos in operating rooms. Every rejected family dinner invitation, every dismissed achievement, every Christmas at the children's table. I saw it all and I prepared. The key enclosed opens box 447 at Chase Private Banking downtown branch. Inside you'll find documents that will change everything. The 5 names below are the only people you can trust. 1. James Morrison, estate attorney. 2. David Campbell, Tech Venture Partners CEO. 3. Margaret Chen, Chase Private Wealth Advisor. 4. Dr. Samuel Roberts, independent board member. 5. Patricia Williams, Securities and Exchange Commission. Your siblings don't know about the $12 million trust fund I established in 2009 or the 35% of Hodges Medical Group I've held in your name through a blind trust. They've been making decisions thinking Marcus 20% gave him control. They're wrong. Don't reveal this until the shareholders' meeting. Let them show their true colors publicly. When the moment comes, you'll know. Remember, they worship at the altar of traditional medicine. Make them kneel in their own church. All my love, Mom. The letter felt like she was speaking from beyond. Her strategic mind still 3 moves ahead. Even in death, Eleanor Hodes was playing chess while her children played checkers. If you've ever felt like your family doesn't understand or value what you do, type I relate in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the dramatic confrontation that's about to unfold. This story will show you that sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who understand us the least. Morrison and Associates occupied the entire 47th floor of the Columbia Center. Their conference room offering a panoramic view of Elliott Bay. At 9 a.m. sharp, I entered to find 47 family members already assembled, their voices creating a low hum of medical terminology and stock predictions. Marcus stood at the head of the table, every inch the commanding surgeon. You don't need to be here, Alana. Mom invited me. I held up her letter. Mom was heavily medicated, Victoria interjected from her seat at Marcus' right hand. Not exactly sound of mind. Morphine doesn't make you forget your children. I took the only empty seat at the far end naturally. Marcus's jaw tightened. What could you possibly contribute to a discussion about medical assets? I'm here to listen. Then listen from outside, he said. This is for stakeholders only. I'm family. Family? Marcus laughed sharp and cold. For 15 years, what have you contributed? What surgeries have you performed? What lives have you saved? What medical journals have published your research? The room fell silent, 47 pairs of eyes turning to watch my humiliation. This was Marcus's operating room, and he was about to perform a public excision. You're right, I said quietly. I haven't saved lives in operating rooms. Exactly. Victoria's smile could have frozen Seattle Bay. So why embarrass yourself? James Morrison cleared his throat from his position by the door. Perhaps we should begin. Mrs. Hodes was quite specific about all named parties being present. Marcus waved dismissively. Fine. Let her watch her siblings inherit what she could never earn. Morrison's eyes met mine briefly, and I caught something unexpected. Anticipation. The next 30 minutes were a masterclass in coordinated humiliation. As Morrison began reviewing the estate's medical assets, the family formed a physical wall of rejection around me. Cousin Jennifer, the pediatric surgeon I'd helped get into Johns Hopkins with my recommendation letter, moved her chair to block my view of the presentation. Maybe you should check your emails, she whispered. This is pretty complex medical finance stuff. Uncle Robert, whose son I'd tutored through calculus, stood up and pointedly closed the blinds behind me. The glare must be bothering those of us doing important work, he announced, leaving me in shadow while the rest of the room remained bright. When Morrison mentioned the hospital's new wing, Victoria interrupted. That's the Marcus Hodges Cardiac Center, named after a real contributor to medicine. She looked directly at me. Some of us build legacies, others just exist. 47 backs turned toward me in perfect synchronization like a choreographed medical ballet. They formed an impenetrable wall of white coats and superiority, leaving me alone at my end of the table. The message was clear. You don't belong here. I pulled out my phone, not to check emails, but to record. The Securities and Exchange Commission would be very interested in some of the merger discussions Marcus was having in what he thought was a private family meeting. Morrison watched it all while making notes in his leather portfolio. When Marcus bragged about the international opportunity he'd secured, Morrison's pen moved faster. When Victoria mentioned restructuring redundancies, he underlined something twice. Before we continue, Morrison said suddenly, I should note that Mrs. Eleanor Hodges included a supplemental document to be read after the primary estate division. Marcus froze mid-gesture. What supplemental document? Marcus's composure cracked like surgical gloves stretched too tight. He strode down the conference table toward me, each step echoing against the marble floor. Let's settle this privately, he said, pulling out his personal checkbook. $50,000 cash today. You leave now and never attend another family business meeting. The room held its breath. This was Marcus's signature move, buying problems away before they became complications. That's generous, I said, not reaching for the check he'd already started writing. More than generous, Victoria added, appearing at his shoulder. It's $50,000 more than you deserve. Take it and maintain some dignity. Or stay, Marcus continued. And get nothing. You're not in Mom's will as a beneficiary of any medical assets. Morrison can confirm that, can't you? Morrison nodded carefully. The medical assets are specifically designated. Yes. See? Marcus tore off the check with a flourish. 50,000 or zero. Choose wisely, little sister. Cousin Jennifer laughed from her position in the wall of backs. That's probably more than she makes in a year doing what is it? Social media. I stood up slowly, meeting Marcus's eyes. I'm staying. His face flushed red, the same color it turned during his legendary operating room tantrums. You stupid stubborn Mr. Hodges, Morrison interrupted, his voice cutting through Marcus' building rage. Perhaps we should discuss the supplemental documentation now. It concerns certain assets that aren't medical in nature. Victoria's eyes narrowed. What kind of assets? Morrison pulled out a sealed envelope marked with Chase Private Banking's logo. Assets that have been held in trust since 2009. Assets that technically already have a designated owner. Marcus' check fluttered to the table. Forgotten. What the hell are you talking about? My phone buzzed with an incoming call, the screen lighting up with David Campbell, CEO Tech Venture Partners. The timing wasn't coincidental. David had been one of the 5 names in Mom's letter. I need to take this, I said, answering on speaker. Hi, David. Alana, perfect timing. The board just approved the IPO filing. We need our strategic advisor's signature by noon. Can you swing by? The valuation came in at $2.3 billion, largely thanks to your healthcare AI integration strategy. Marcus scoffed loud enough for David to hear. Is this a joke? Some startup theatrics? I'm sorry. Who is that? David's voice sharpened. Alana, are you in a meeting? Family estate planning, I replied. I'm with my brother, Dr. Marcus Hodges. The Marcus Hodges who's been pushing the Signprom merger that would destroy community healthcare access across Washington. That Marcus Hodges. The room went silent. Even through speakerphone, David's disdain was palpable. Marcus's face darkened. How does he? Alana's been advising us on healthcare sector disruptions. David continued. She predicted your merger attempt 6 months ago. Called it predictable medical establishment greed. Her counter-strategy is why 3 major tech companies are about to enter the Seattle healthcare market. By the way, Alana, the board approved your advisory shares. Another $5 million vested immediately. Victoria grabbed the table edge. $5 million? Sorry, David. I'll call you back, I said, ending the call. Marcus laughed, but it sounded forced. Tech bubble money. It'll evaporate in a year. Morrison cleared his throat. Speaking of money that won't evaporate, shall we discuss the trust fund Elainer established in 2009? The temperature in this room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Morrison opened the sealed envelope with surgical precision, pulling out a document bearing Chase Private Banking's gold seal. The paper itself seemed to command attention, thick, official, undeniable. Mrs. as Eleanor Hodges established certain financial arrangements that she chose not to disclose to the family, Morrison began, his voice taking on the gravity of a judge reading a verdict. These arrangements predate most of the medical acquisitions you've been discussing. Marcus stepped forward. What arrangements? I'm the executive of her estate. I should know about any. You're the executive of her medical estate. Morrison corrected. This is something different entirely. Victoria pulled out her phone, frantically typing. I'm calling our lawyers. This sounds like completely legal and filed with the SEC in 2009. Morrison continued. Mrs. Hodges was quite thorough. She established a trust, transferred assets, and made certain preparations for today. What kind of preparations? Uncle Robert demanded from his position among the 47. Morrison looked directly at me. The kind that ensure the right person leads Hodges Medical Group into the future. Mrs. Hodges believed that medicine needed to evolve, that technology and healthcare would merge, and that someone with feet in both worlds would be essential. That's ridiculous, Marcus spat. I've been groomed for leadership since you were 12, Morrison finished. Yes, Mrs. Hodges mentioned that. She also mentioned that in 15 years of preparation, you never once asked about her vision for the future. You assumed you knew it. He pulled out another document. This will be fully revealed at the shareholders' meeting on March 15 as per Mrs. Hodges' explicit instructions. The Fairmont Olympic Hotel, 2 p.m. I trust you'll all be there. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. What are you hiding? Nothing. I'm simply following Elainer's timeline. March 15 arrived with Seattle's typical gray drizzle, but inside the Fairmont Olympic Hotel's grand ballroom, the atmosphere was electric. 300 attendees filled the space. Shareholders, medical journal reporters, representatives from Reuters and Bloomberg, and every significant healthcare executive in the Pacific Northwest. Marcus had orchestrated this meeting as his coronation. Banners reading Hodges Medical Group, the future of healthcare, flanked a stage where he stood in his best Italian suit, a wireless mic clipped to his lapel like a Medal of Honor. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying the authority of countless surgical victories. "The Hodges family has served Seattle's medical needs for 3 generations. My grandfather started with 1 clinic. My mother expanded to 12 facilities. And today, under my leadership, we stand ready for global expansion." The audience applauded. I sat in the back row, manila folder in my lap, watching Marcus paint his vision of medical dynasty. "The AITAH family," he continued, gesturing to Victoria beside him, "consists of dedicated medical professionals. My sister Victoria, who turned Cascade Private Hospital profitable. Myself. With over 2,000 successful cardiac surgeries, we embody medical excellence." He paused, his eyes finding me in the crowd. Of course, not everyone in the family followed our calling. Some chose easier paths, less meaningful pursuits. But we don't let one bad apple spoil the barrel of our medical heritage. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. The Bloomberg reporter was already typing on her phone. "Which is why Marcus announced, we're implementing new bylaws. Only medical professionals will hold voting shares in Hodges Medical Group going forward. We must preserve the purity of our mission." I stood up. 300 heads turned as I walked toward the stage, my heels clicking against marble. Victoria took the microphone as I approached the stage, her smile sharp enough to perform surgery. "Before any interruptions, let me present our 5-year projection under the new structure." The presentation screen lit up with charts showing the systematic removal of non-medical shareholders, a category with only 1 member, me. The audience shifted uncomfortably, recognizing a public execution when they saw one. "As you can see," Victoria continued, her laser pointer circling my name on the chart. "Removing unqualified influences will streamline decision-making and ensure medical integrity. Some people think watching Grey's Anatomy makes them health experts." The joke landed poorly. A few nervous chuckles died quickly when they saw my face remain calm. Marcus reclaimed the mic. "We're not being cruel. We're being practical. Would you want someone who's never held a scalpel making decisions about surgical protocols? Someone whose biggest achievement is making computers talk to each other?" The Reuters reporter raised her hand. "Mr. Hodes, are you referring to a specific family member?" "I'm referring to maintaining standards," Marcus replied smoothly. "Excellence demands exclusivity." I reached the stage steps. Security moved to block me, but Morrison appeared from the side entrance, followed by David Campbell and 3 other individuals I recognized from Mom's list. "I believe Ms. Hodges has something to contribute," Morrison announced, his voice carrying legal authority that made security step aside. The audience leaned forward. Phones appeared, ready to record whatever drama was about to unfold. The Bloomberg reporter was already live tweeting, "Major disruption at Hodges Medical shareholders meeting. Family dispute going public." Victoria's composure cracked slightly. "This is a private meeting." "A shareholders meeting," I corrected, stepping onto the stage. "And I have an announcement about shareholdings." I stood at the podium, 300 pairs of eyes locked on me. Marcus and Victoria flanked me like disapproving bookends, their body language screaming contempt. The Bloomberg reporter had her phone raised, live streaming to thousands. "I have documentation regarding Hodges Medical Group ownership," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Marcus laughed into his still hot mic. "Everyone, my sister thinks she has documentation. What's next, Alana? Did you buy a share on Robinhood?" The audience tittered. Someone whispered, "This is embarrassing." I opened my manila folder and pulled out the first document. This is a certificate of ownership filed with the SEC in 2009, notarized by Morrison & Associates, and validated by Chase Private Banking. Victoria stepped forward. "That's impossible. I've seen all ownership records." "You've seen the public records." Morrison interrupted from his position by the stage. "Mrs. Eleanor Hodges maintained private trusts that weren't required to be disclosed until activated." "Activated?" Marcus' confidence wavered. "What do you mean activated?" I held up the certificate where everyone could see the gold seal, the official stamps, the undeniable legitimacy. "As of today, I own 35% of Hodges Medical Group." Silence. Complete absolute silence. Then Marcus laughed. Forced desperate. "That's impossible. Mom's shares were split between the children she told you about," I said. "But Mom played a longer game. She transferred shares to a blind trust in my name when I was 19, the year I chose Stanford over medical school. The year you all wrote me off." David Campbell stepped forward. "I can verify this. We've been working with Ms. as knowing she was the majority shareholder. It's why Tech Venture Partners chose her as our healthcare strategy advisor. The room exploded. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. The impossible had happened. This is the moment everything changes. If you want to see how Marcus reacts to losing control of his empire, hit that like button right now. What do you think will happen next? Drop your predictions in the comments and remember to share this with anyone who's ever been underestimated by their family. Morrison stepped onto the stage carrying a leather portfolio, his presence commanding immediate attention. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm James Morrison, estate attorney for Elena Raj. I can confirm that Ms. Alana Hodes is indeed the largest individual shareholder of AITAH Medical Group. He pulled out a stack of documents, each one bearing official seals. Trust Fund Number TMH 20,098,847, established at Chase Private Banking. Initial transfer of 15% ownership in 2009 with additional transfers in 2011, 2015, and 2019 totaling 35% of all outstanding shares. The math was simple and devastating. Marcus owned 20%. Victoria owned 12%. The remaining family members and institutional investors held 33%. I controlled the company. This is fraud, Marcus shouted, his surgical composure completely shattered. Mom would never. Your mother was quite specific, Morrison continued, projecting a document onto the screen. Quote, my daughter Alana sees the future while my other children cling to the past. Healthcare isn't just about surgery anymore. It's about systems, data, and accessibility. She understands this. They don't. Gasps rippled through the audience. The Reuters reporter was typing furiously. Breaking tech executive revealed as majority owner of 340 Mala's medical group in dramatic family coup. Victoria grabbed the microphone. Even if this is real, she knows nothing about medicine. She can't what? I asked calmly. Can't stop you from selling our community hospitals to Saparm for a fraction of their value. Can't prevent Marcus from collecting his $50 million commission while destroying Mom's charity programs. Marcus's face went white. How do you know about? Because unlike you, I actually read the board minutes. All of them, including the ones you thought were private. The audience was in chaos. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. It was a corporate revolution playing out in real time. David Campbell commanded the stage with the confidence of someone who'd pitched to venture capitalists and won. Since we're discussing qualifications, let me share something about Alana Aj that her family seems to have missed. He pulled up his phone, projecting an email onto the main screen. This is from our board of directors at Tech Venture Partners. Ms. Hodges served as our strategic healthcare advisor for our $2.3 billion IPO, the largest healthcare technology offering in Pacific Northwest history. The email was clear. Alana Hodges' strategic vision increased our valuation by 40%. Her healthcare AI protocols are being adopted by 16 major hospital systems. Goldman Sachs called her the architect of modern healthcare integration. David continued, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. She turned down a $5 million bonus to be here today. Google, Apple, and Amazon have all tried to poach her with seven-figure packages. She refused them all to stay in Seattle, trying to save her family's company from the inside. That's tech money, not real, Marcus started. Real enough that her strategies saved 12 rural hospitals from closure last year, David interrupted. Her diagnostic algorithms have identified rare diseases in over 10,000 patients who would have died waiting for traditional diagnosis. How many lives have your surgeries saved, Dr. Hodges? 2,000. She saved 5 times that with code. The Bloomberg reporter was on her feet. Mr. Campbell, are you saying Miss Hodes has been running a shadow healthcare operation? I'm saying she's been building the future while her family was protecting the past, David replied. The only reason Hodges Medical Group hasn't been acquired by a tech giant already is because Alana convinced us to wait. She wanted to preserve her mother's legacy. Victoria sank into a chair, the reality finally hitting her. I pulled out Mom's final letter, my hand steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. Before we vote on anything, I think the shareholders should hear Elena Hodges' actual vision. The room fell silent as I read. To the shareholders of Hodges Medical Group, if you're hearing this, then my daughter Alana has finally taken her rightful place. For 15 years, I watched my medical children dismiss her because she chose circuits over surgery. They never understood that she wasn't abandoning medicine. She was evolving it. While Marcus performed his surgeries, Alana designed systems that could prevent the need for surgery altogether. While Victoria managed one hospital, Alana created platforms that could manage hundreds. They saved lives in operating rooms. She saved lives at scale. I transferred 35% ownership to Alana, not as favoritism, but as strategy. Healthcare's future isn't in scalpels. It's in systems. It's not an individual brilliance. It's an accessible intelligence. Marcus and Victoria are excellent at what medicine was. Alana understands what medicine must become. The charity programs, the free clinics, the community outreach, these weren't tax write-offs. They were the soul of our mission. Any merger that threatens them betrays everything we built. Any leadership that prioritizes profit over patients has forgotten our purpose. Alana never sought your approval because she didn't need it. She had mine, and now she has the power to ensure Hodges Medical Group serves the future, not just the past. Trust her vision. I did. Eleanor Aj. When I finished reading, several board members were wiping their eyes. The Reuters reporter had stopped typing, just staring. Even Marcus stood frozen, Mom's words hanging in the air like a verdict. Motion to cancel the SoFarm merger, I said quietly. All in favor? Motion to terminate the SoFarm merger agreement, I repeated, my voice carrying across the silent ballroom. As majority shareholder, I call for an immediate vote. Marcus found his voice. You can't just according to corporate bylaws. Any shareholder with more than 30% can call an emergency vote, Morrison interjected. Ms. Hodes owns 35%. The board members exchanged glances. Dr. Samuel Roberts, the independent director Mom had named in her letter, stood first. I second the motion. The SoFarm deal undervalues our assets by 47%. I've been saying this for months, but Marcus wouldn't listen. All in favor? I asked. Hands rose slowly at first, then in a wave. My 35%. Roberts' 8%. 3 institutional investors holding 15% combined. Even some family members freed from Marcus' influence raised their hands. Motion carries with 58% approval. Morrison announced the SoFarm merger is terminated. Marcus' face cycled through red to purple. That's $50 million in commission that you were taking while selling out Mom's legacy. I finished. The SEC filing you signed has a clawback provision. Any terminated merger means you personally owe the company $3 million in already spent preparatory costs. Victoria gasped. Marcus, you said there was no risk. There wasn't, he sputtered. Until I exercised my legal rights as majority shareholder. I pulled up another document on my phone. Speaking of which, motion to remove Marcus Hodges as CEO for breach of fiduciary duty. The SoFarm negotiations violated 3 board resolutions about maintaining charitable operations. The vote was faster this time, 62% in favor. Motion carries, Morrison announced. Dr. Marcus Hodes is removed as CEO effective immediately. The Bloomberg reporter's headline was already live. Family coup tech overthrows medical dynasty in boardroom bloodbath. The boardroom erupted as the reality sank in. Marcus stood frozen at the podium, his carefully constructed world crumbling in real time. The board members were already reorganizing, gravitating toward the new power structure. Dr. Roberts took the microphone. We need interim leadership immediately. I nominate Alana Hodes as strategic board chair. Seconded, called Margaret Chen from Chase Private Banking. We've monitored Ms. Hodges' strategic decisions for 15 years. She's ready. She's not even a doctor, Victoria protested weakly. Neither was Steve Jobs, but he revolutionized healthcare technology, Roberts replied. The position of strategic board chair doesn't require medical credentials. It requires vision. Motion to vote. The result was overwhelming, 71% in favor. Even some family members who'd ignored me for years raised their hands, suddenly seeing which way the wind was blowing. Additionally, I said, taking control of the meeting. Victoria will maintain her operational role at Cascade Private Hospital, but she'll report to the board, not to the CEO. Any objections? Victoria looked like she wanted to object, but saw the futility. No, she whispered. As for the new CEO position, I continued, we LL conduct a national search, but I can tell you now it won't be someone who values profit over patients or connections over competence. The Reuters reporter raised her hand. Ms. Hodes, what's your immediate priority? Implementing the Eleanor Hodges Community Care Initiative, a $30 million investment in free clinics and AI-assisted diagnostics for underserved communities. It's what my mother wanted and it's what Seattle needs. Applause broke out spontaneously. Not from my family, they stood in stunned silence, but from the institutional investors, the medical professionals who'd been silenced by Marcus' ego and the reporters who recognized they were witnessing history. Marcus finally spoke, his voice hollow. You planned this. After the meeting dissolved into chaos, reporters rushing to file stories, board members making calls, family members huddling in shocked clusters, Marcus cornered me in the marble hallway outside the ballroom. You planned this, he repeated, His surgeon's hands clenched into fists. This whole thing was calculated. I didn't plan anything, I replied calmly. Mom did. I just executed her vision. Victoria joined us. Her designer heels clicking on marble. How long have you known about the shares since the day she died? But you two have been dismissing me for 15 years. Why would that change if you knew I had power? We're family, Marcus said as if that word meant something now. You could have told us like you told me about the Synprom deal, like you included me in board meetings, like you acknowledged my contributions to the company's digital infrastructure. I pulled out my phone, showing them a folder of emails. 500 emails over 5 years, begging to be included, to contribute, to help. You responded to exactly 0. Victoria's face crumbled slightly. We thought you were happy in tech. I was. I am. But I also wanted to be part of our family's legacy. You made it clear that only medical degrees counted, so I built my own legacy. And Mom saw it even if you didn't. Marcus tried one last manipulation. The family will never accept you as the family just voted me in with 71% approval. I cut him off. They accept success, Marcus. They always have. You taught me that. I turned to leave, then paused. Your things will be packed and sent to your home. Don't come to the executive floor. Security has already been notified. Their silence followed me down the hall. Within 48 hours, the story exploded across financial and medical media. Forbes ran a feature. The $50 million mistake. How arrogance cost a CEO everything. The article detailed how dismissing a sister's expertise led to Marcus losing not just the CEO position, but also 3 other board positions. As news of his failed merger spread, the stock market responded immediately. Hodges Medical Group shares jumped 18% in 2 days, adding $61 million in market value. CNBC called it the most dramatic family business takeover since the Murdoch, featuring a split screen of Marcus' dismissive quotes from the meeting against my calm revelation of majority ownership. Bloomberg's in-depth analysis was brutal. Marcus Hodges spent 15 years building a medical empire on nepotism and ego. It took his sister 15 minutes to dismantle it with facts and legal documents. 5 acquisition offers landed on my desk within a week. All from major healthcare technology companies sensing opportunity. The highest came from Amazon Healthcare. $520 million for the entire operation. I rejected them all with a simple statement. Hodges Medical Group is not for sale. We're just getting started. The medical community's response was mixed but telling. The American Medical Association stayed diplomatically silent, but the Healthcare Innovation Council invited me to keynote their annual conference. Young doctors and medical students flooded my LinkedIn with messages, excited about a future where technology and medicine truly merged. Marcus, meanwhile, faced a different media storm. The state medical board announced an investigation into his merger negotiations, specifically whether he'd prioritized personal gain over patient welfare. 3 malpractice suits that had been quietly settled suddenly resurfaced. Their plaintiffs emboldened by his fall from power. The numbers told the story. In 2 weeks, Marcus went from 5 board positions to 0. From a $50 million windfall to a $3 million debt. My phone became a museum of family hypocrisy. Within 72 hours of the meeting, all 47 family members who'd ignored me for 15 years suddenly remembered my existence. Cousin Jennifer, who had blocked my view at the estate meeting, texted, "Always knew you were special. Let's grab coffee and discuss opportunities at the pediatric center." I screenshotted next to her message from 2 years ago. "Stop bothering me with your computer stuff." Uncle Robert sent a formal email proposing a strategic family partnership and mentioning his always recognized potential in me. This from the man who'd literally turned his back on me 3 months earlier. I forwarded it to my assistant with 1 word decline. The most pathetic attempt came from Marcus's wife, Patricia, who'd never spoken to me directly in 20 years. She called, crying about their mortgage, their kids' private school tuition, how Marcus was suffering. I reminded her of the Christmas dinner where she'd loudly asked if I could even afford to contribute to the family gift exchange. Only 2 cousins reached out with genuine congratulations, Sarah, a nurse who'd always been kind despite family pressure, and Michael, a medical student who'd secretly asked me for career advice. They were the only family members I responded to. I created a folder labeled Family Revisionist History and filed every message. My lawyer suggested keeping them for potential future legal issues, but I had a different purpose. They were reminders of why boundaries exist. The mass blocking took 5 minutes. 45 family members gone from my phone, email, and social media. Sarah and Michael remained. My real family, David Campbell, my team at work, the mentors who'd actually supported me. They were the ones celebrating with me. Amazing how 35% ownership improves people's memory, I told Morrison. He just smiled. The professional dominoes fell fast and hard. Marcus' carefully constructed medical empire collapsed in a cascade of consequences that played out in public view. First came the board positions. Within 2 weeks, Marcus was removed from the boards of Seattle Presbyterian Cascade Medical Ventures and Northwest Surgical Associates. The official reasons varied. Strategic restructuring, new directions, fresh perspectives, but everyone knew the truth. His failed $50 million Suparm deal had exposed him as someone who'd sell out healthcare for personal gain. Victoria's situation was more complex. An internal audit I'd ordered revealed $2.3 million in questionable allocations at her hospital. Funds diverted from charity care to executive bonuses. She wasn't fired, but she accepted a demotion to deputy director rather than face a forensic accounting investigation. Her Harvard guest lecture was quietly canceled. The financial hit was severe. Marcus had already spent $8 million of his expected Suparm commission on a new Bellevue mansion. With the deal dead and his CEO salary gone, he was forced to list his current penthouse at a $2 million loss. The Seattle Times ran a photo of the for sale sign with the headline, "How the Mighty Fall." His medical practice suffered, too. 3 partners at his surgical group formally requested he take a sabbatical after patients started requesting different surgeons. "I don't want someone who'd sell out healthcare operating on my heart," one patient told the media. The final blow came from the IRS. The failed merger triggered a review of Marcus' past filings, specifically deductions he'd claimed for medical research that looked suspiciously like family vacations. He now faced a $4.7 million tax bill with penalties. In 14 days, Marcus went from king of Seattle medicine to a cautionary tale about hubris, greed, and the danger of underestimating family members. While Marcus' world crumbled, mine expanded in ways I'd never imagined. The numbers told a story of vindication that no family dismissal could erase. My net worth jumped from $2 million to $78 million once the market recognized Hodges Medical Group's true value under new leadership. The 35% stake Mom had hidden for 15 years was now worth more than Marcus and Victoria's combined assets had ever been. 3 TED Talk invitations arrived within a month. I accepted one. When family rejects your future, building health cares tomorrow despite yesterday's doubts. It would eventually reach 12 million views. Harvard Business School announced they were writing a case study about the takeover titled The Hodges Reversal, When Outsiders Become Ultimate Insiders. They interviewed me for 6 hours, fascinated by Mom's long-term strategy and my patient execution. But the achievement that mattered most was breaking ground on the Eleanor Hodges Community Care Center, a state-of-the-art facility, combining free health care with AI diagnostics. The ceremony drew hundreds, including the governor, who called it the future of accessible medicine. I held Mom's photo as I turned the first shovel of dirt. The second quarter results under my leadership spoke volumes. 32% revenue increase, 50% reduction in patient complaints, 100% retention of charity programs. The same family members who'd mocked my computer skills now watched those skills transform a stagnant medical empire into a healthcare innovation leader. David Campbell sent me a congratulations card with one line. "Your mother saw what they couldn't." That healing isn't just about medicine. It's about systems that make medicine accessible to all. I framed it next to my MBA, my tech awards, and a photo of Mom. The wall that once felt empty with achievements my family didn't value now told the complete story. 6 months after the takeover, Marcus requested a meeting through his lawyer. I agreed, but on my terms. Morrison's office, lawyers present, recorded for legal protection and limited to 30 minutes. Marcus arrived looking diminished. His designer suit replaced with off-the-rack, his surgeon swagger reduced to careful steps. He sat across the conference table like a defendant, not the brother who once ruled our family. "I need to return to the company," he began. "Not as CEO, just as a surgeon. I have skills." "You have skills," I agreed. "But Hodges Medical Group doesn't need them. Seattle has many hospitals. Apply there. They won't hire me. You know that. I know that's a consequence of your choices, not mine." Victoria, who joined virtually, tried emotional manipulation. "We're family, Alana. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It means everything," I replied. "Which is why your treatment of me for 15 years has established exactly what our relationship is. You taught me that family is conditional on medical degrees and traditional success. I'm simply applying your rules." "We were wrong," Marcus started. "Yes, you were. And being wrong has consequences." I slid a document across the table. "These are the terms for any future interaction. Professional communication only through assistants or lawyers. No family events where business might be discussed. No requests for recommendations, interventions, or special treatment. No attempts to leverage our biological relationship for professional gain. "This is cruel," Victoria whispered. "This is boundaries," I corrected. "Something I should have established years ago. You're not entitled to my success just because we share DNA. You made that clear when you felt I had nothing to offer. The rule hasn't changed just because the positions have." Morrison ended the meeting exactly at 30 minutes. Marcus left without another word. The second quarter under my strategic leadership proved that competence trumps credentials. AITAH Medical Group posted its best financial results in its 70-year history. Revenue up 32%, patient satisfaction at 94% and operational costs down 18% through AI-driven efficiency improvements. The Ella Lehner Hodges Community Care Center treated its first 1,000 patients for free with our diagnostic AI, catching 17 cases of rare diseases that traditional screening had missed. Local news called it revolutionary healthcare democracy. I called it Mom's vision finally realized. Marcus formally requested reinstatement twice more, both times rejected by the board without my input needed. His reputation in Seattle medical circles was toxic. The surgeon who tried to sell out community health care for personal gain. He eventually took a position in Portland, a demotion that required him to sell his remaining Seattle properties. Victoria adapted better, accepting her reduced role with quiet dignity. She focused on operational excellence at her single hospital, no longer trying to empire build. In our only direct interaction, she admitted, "You were right. I was so focused on managing one hospital that I never saw the bigger picture Mom saw in you." The new CEO we hired, Dr. James Park, a Korean-American physician with both medical and technology degrees, represented everything the old guard feared. Diversity, innovation, and patient-first priorities. Marcus would have hated him. Mom would have loved him. Our third quarter projections showed continued growth with 3 more community care centers planned. The board unanimously approved my strategic plan for AI-integrated healthcare across all facilities. The same boardroom where I'd been humiliated now treated my presentations with the respect they'd always deserved. "Best quarter in 70 years, Dr. Roberts announced at the board meeting. Achieved when we finally let the right person lead regardless of their degree. I started therapy 2 months after the takeover. Not because I was struggling, but because I wanted to process 15 years of family trauma in a healthy way. Dr. Martinez, recommended by David Campbell, specialized in family dynamics and professional identity. You spent so long fighting for their approval, she observed during our 6th session. How does it feel to realize you never needed it? Free, I answered immediately. And angry that it took Mom dying for me to see it. The anger faded with time, replaced by something more valuable, peace. I built my chosen family carefully. David Campbell became the mentor Marcus never was. My team at work celebrated my victories without jealousy, and new friends in the tech health space understood my vision without requiring explanation. I started mentoring young women in technology, especially those from medical families who didn't understand their career choices. My monthly Breaking the Stethoscope Ceiling workshops drew hundreds of attendees. One young woman crying after my talk said, "My parents are both doctors. They call my computer science degree a waste. You just showed me it's not." Sunday mornings, I visited Mom's grave at Lakeview Cemetery. The elaborate AITAH family plot had spaces for everyone except apparently the non-medical daughter. I bought my own plot nearby, close enough to visit Mom, far enough to maintain boundaries even in death. "I did it, Mom," I told her headstone after the 4th quarter results came in. "Not the way you planned maybe, but the way it needed to happen. The company is thriving. Your charity vision is alive. And I finally understand what you tried to teach me. That my worth was never dependent on their validation. A year ago, I'd stood alone at her deathbed. Now, I stood alone by choice. Finally understanding the difference between loneliness and solitude. Looking back now, I realize Mom's greatest gift wasn't the 35% ownership or the $12 million trust fund. It was teaching me through her death and final letter that family isn't about blood. It's about who sees your value when you're not performing for them. For 15 years, I bet myself into knots, trying to earn a place at a table that was never built to include me. I brought my expertise, my connections, my unpaid labor, hoping that eventually achievement would translate to acceptance. It never did. Success without a stethoscope was invisible in the AITAH family. But here's what I learned. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time, not the 15th. Marcus and Victoria didn't suddenly become dismissive when Mom died. They'd always been that way. I just kept hoping their love for me would eventually outweigh their love for status. The boundaries I set weren't about punishment or revenge. They were about finally accepting that some relationships are transactional, and when you have nothing they want, you become nothing to them. The moment I had something they needed, power, money, influence, suddenly I was family again. That's not love, that's opportunism. Your worth isn't determined by people who only see your value when it benefits them. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop trying to earn love that should be freely given. Set your boundaries not from anger, but from clarity. Build your chosen family from those who celebrated you before you had power, not those who remembered you after. Success isn't about proving wrong those who doubted you. It's about finally believing those who never did, including yourself. The AITAH Medical Group is thriving. Mom's vision is realized, and I'm at peace with being the family outlier who became the family leader.
That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the stories. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.